Hi, everybody. Hello. Welcome to the Jeff Gerstmann Show. It's October. And that means it's time for fun. Fun-sized candy bars abound at all your stores, I guess. Right? I mean, I went to a store a few weeks ago before I got sick, and I was shocked at just how many Halloween displays were already set up. I was like, it's mid-September. What the heck is wrong with you? And then I blinked, and now here we are. It's October 4th, and I'm like, well, I cannot deny that now is exactly the right time to have your freaking candy out for sale. So, yeah, so my daughter is 3, so this is probably going to be the first proper Halloween. We dressed her up last year, but, she was 2. She was stumbling around. She was, now she's like excited about it. Now she has opinions on not only who she is going to dress up as, but that everyone else needs to dress up to fit the theme. We'll see if she sticks to that. I am down to do it if that's what she wants. I think that's the appropriate answer for all things when it comes to the kids. But if she wants everyone to dress up like the cast of Frozen, then I will. Then all four we will do that. That's looking like how it's going to go. So I don't have any piece of a costume yet or anything like that. But it's only October 4th, right? So just gotta wait and hope that everyone forgets. and then we'll see how it goes. I don't know, I don't know how trick-or-treating works anymore. It's been a weird few years, and so now we're kind of in this strange the family is now in this strange limbo where, we're still a little bit of sniffly and all that other stuff, but we are technically past the 10-day mark, which is what the CDC says matters. And, we're testing negative and all that other stuff. So we're kind of on the other side of COVID, I guess. I have not taken any cold medicine or anything like that for about 3 days now. But it's still this lingering blah feeling, you know what I mean? And still a real lack of energy, but other than that, pretty much fine. So yeah, it's a shitty thing. I'm gonna say don't get it. That's my bold. I hate to start the show with hot takes, but you should try to avoid getting sick with the plague. If they offer you vaccines, I think you should get them to help reduce the impact of all that stuff. Just seems smart. You don't want this. You definitely don't want this. So get out there, get boosted, all the other stuff. Get out there and go boosting. Get out there and steal some stuff. No. Yeah, so like now we're invincible. I guess for a period of time here, I guess until another variant emerges, or until a certain amount of time has passed. I'm not actually sure, but we do have a little window here where we can go fucking buck wild. There's a used video game store in town that I've never been to that I'm going to go to. I'm not going to wear a mask because no one's wearing masks anymore. And now, I guess everyone's already fucking had it, and all that other stuff. So I don't know. Yeah, we've got our little window here where we'll, be safe out there, I guess. So weird. It's all weird. The world is weird. Very scary. We're going to get out there and do something one of these days here. What else is going on? My daughter is, my wife found her 3DS and my daughter got her hands on it and became very interested in Animal Crossing, New Leaf specifically, the last good Animal Crossing. And so we created a character for her in my wife's town, and she'll do, she knows which buttons to press to shake the trees and all that other stuff, but I'm still walking around for her and stuff like that. And she wants to go around and talk to everybody, and I read her how what the townspeople want, and then she's very excited when we go catch fish. She's very excited about the fishing and all that other stuff. So that's the first like video game, like she knows what Pac-Man is and all that other stuff, but cannot work the D-pad well enough to move Pac-Man around. I'll turn on cheats and stuff so that so that Pac-Man will not get eaten by the ghosts and all this other stuff. But she's not she just doesn't understand the pure concept of moving Pac-Man around. So Animal Crossing is kind of the first thing she's shown like genuine interest in. And I was holding off on this, what's it even called? Disney Dream Speedway? No, the Disney Animal Crossing. Dreamlight Valley. Thank you, Bryn. Because she, my understanding is that somewhere in there are the Frozen characters. So, so I'm going to try that out and try creating a character and start playing some of that to get it to a point where maybe when I show it to her, there'll be something to show. I've heard heard very good things about that game. Which is cool. I don't know. Like, it's cool when licensed stuff is good, right? I mean, especially I think, kids get into licenses and then they want to know more about, they want to do more with the licenses they like, and and it makes sense. Boy, I hate Disney, but I don't have a choice. So here we are. But yeah, no, I do want to check that thing out because it actually does look fascinating in some different ways. So I think that's pretty cool. And we'll give that a look now that she's showing interest in Animal Crossing. Maybe it's the right time for me to start on that game in secret and get to a point where the characters she knows and loves are in the village or whatever it is, and check all that stuff out. So yeah, that's kind of been the stuff that's been happening in the background here, while we've been sick. And kind of laying around. Not really, I don't know. We wanted to lay around more than we did. The kids never lost any energy. They never were subdued in any way. They just got coughs and the sniffles and became even crazier. So my wife and I being very, very sick. It was it was a bit, it was an ordeal at times, for sure, with all the not sleeping and all the coughing and all that other stuff. But whatever. It's nuts. So I don't know. We've got a lot of news to get through, a couple of games and stuff like that. Why don't we take a quick break? We'll come back. We'll talk about hentai. Yeah. I said hentai. Dress shirts, let's talk about them. They're the worst. They're pointless. Like, most of them don't even look good, but the ones that look all right are usually stiff as heck. You can't do anything in them. They're like sheer in weird spots and too thick in others. Even the ones that you get that fit right are still just made of like the worst feeling materials. It's just uncomfortable. It's a hassle. Like, if you want to go do something else, like, you're like, okay, well, let me change into a shirt I can move in. Ugh. Well, look, we can all agree that the dress shirt was due for a radical reinvention. And Rhone has stepped up to the challenge. Rhone's commuter shirt is the most comfortable, breathable, and flexible shirt known to man. That's a bold claim, but here's why. Rhone's got comfortable 4-way stretch fabric, so that provides breathability and flexibility that leaves you free to enjoy what life throws your way from whatever, you're commuting in or whatever, you're going to go play some golf or, what we can do, you're like, hey, we're at this wedding and I'm in this dress shirt and it's too stiff for me to do anything else, but I'm in this dress shirt because I'm at this wedding. and then you end up go like screwing around later and you're still, something you can do something in, something you can live in and still look good. You can feel confident in Rhone's shirts because it's a wrinkle-free shirt without the hassle. Rhone's wrinkle release technology makes wrinkles disappear as you stretch and wear the shirt. It's that easy. That's it. And it's got odor-free technology in it. That's right. Gold Fusion anti-odor tech means you'll be smelling fresh and clean all day long. On top of that, Rhone is 100% machine washable. That's right. That is maybe the biggest. We should have mentioned that up front. No dry cleaner. You don't have to take this or hey, you don't have to let this shirt sit somewhere for a year and a half where you think like, I got to take this in and get dry clean. I should just get rid of this shirt. No. Machine washable shirts. That's the power of Rhone. And it's versatile. You can feel all right in it. You can put on this shirt and feel like, hey, this is okay to wear this. I feel like a human in this, not some stiff robot weirdo. And you can wear it all day long and still feel fresh at the end of it, no matter what you're doing. You go on a date, you need a dress shirt for something, you got a happy hour, you're out with your friends, like whatever. The Rhone commuter shirt is up to the challenge. The commuter shirt can get you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. Head to Rhone.com/Jeff and use the promo code Jeff to save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to RHONE.com/Jeff and use the code Jeff. It's time to find your corner office comfort. Okay, we're back. Yeah, so hey, you can get over to patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann if you want to get an ad-free version of this podcast. There's also some hot bonus content available at various tiers. You want to get early access to the Jeff Gerstmann Hall of Fame, with new episode coming soon. That's a monthly joint. And also episodes of Game Boys to Men, the Patreon exclusive podcast that is tearing the world asunder. You can get that as well. Also access to the Discord, all sorts of other fun stuff is happening over there. And thanks to everyone who is backed the Patreon or, be gifted Twitch subs or I was going to say YouTube super chats, but I don't think I have that stuff turned on. And all of that sort of stuff for allowing me to do this independently and not be under, corporate ownership and not have to be traded around like baseball cards, and all that sort of stuff. Thanks to everyone for allowing me to bring this to you unfettered and all of that sort of stuff. It means a lot. I literally could not do it without you. So yeah, head over to patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. The whole the whole Patreon used to bill everybody on the first. They don't do that anymore. That's set up. So whenever it's the fourth, but it is now set up for like subscription style. So when you sign up, you will be billed a month later. So that whole thing of like, don't subscribe to a Patreon on the 25th or you'll get double billed. Like all that stuff is in the past. And all of that sort of stuff. So that's a hot upgrade over there. So check it out, patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. If you can't spell that, then perhaps you can spell dopeassvideogames.com or enjoyyourgaming.com. And those will all redirect you to the same place. But thanks to everybody, obviously, hey, money's crazy right now. Understandable. So, anyone listening to the show, subscribing to the YouTube channel and doing all that sort of stuff. Thanks to everyone for keeping this going. It really does mean a lot. It's real crazy to go through an illness and be like, oh man, yeah, literally if I'm not here to get this stuff done, it cannot get done. We did the podcast on Thursday last week because I was too sick on Tuesday to do it. And so a bit of a short show there with a bonus. If you didn't listen last week, the a little bit of the first episode of Game Boys to Men kind of fills out the runtime there as a hot bonus for you if you want to get a listen to what Glenn and I are talking about. That episode's about his time as an expert witness in the Galoob Game Genie trial, where the Nintendo tried to sue Galoob to keep the Game Genie off shelves and all that sort of stuff. It's a fascinating listen. We're due to record another one of those pretty soon here. Me being sick has thrown everything off, so it was like I'm still trying to kind of catch up to a handful of things around the edges and stuff like that. But I did manage to play a couple of games. Hentai Survivors is on Steam. It appears to be kind of attempting to. It is an ass game. It is in more ways than one. It is an auto shooting survival game, much like Vampire Survivors or Survivor.io on phones, which also I've been playing the shit out of. Because being sick, I was like, I don't want to sit in front of a computer, but I can play this phone game, and so I played quite a lot of that, and messed around with my Steam Deck a bunch as well. But Hentai Survivors is shameless. It is a terrible video game. It is absolute trash. And I believe it is $5 on Steam. Perhaps it is $5.99. I don't have it in front of me. It is a poor quality product. And yes, like I said, it is attempting to follow in the footsteps of Vampire Survivors. But you pick a anime lady, and then a chibi version of the anime lady is on screen, and you walk around and enemies attack you, and you have a variety of attacks that automatically fire off to push them away. But all of the attacks are like the first girl just has a radius that kind of shoots out from her. They're fully clothed, by the way, in this part of the game. And so you have to walk near the enemies to damage them. And the character movement is so slow. It's like this really, like, I get it. Like, you're selling porno, and like porn parodies of real things are never actually good at being the real thing, generally speaking. There was that Revenge of the Nerds. This ain't Revenge of the whatever. But generally speaking, there was the Poonies. I mean, also, if we really want, generally speaking, parodies, pornographic parodies of real things, are generally fucking terrible. And this being kind of a takeoff of Vampire Survivors and stuff like that. There's just a fundamental misunderstanding of what makes that game good, and none of that is represented in Hentai Survivors. It is the character movement is so sluggish and so slow that you just have to like kite the enemies around. You do such little damage, especially at the start of a run, that you just have to just like very carefully walk in a circle and kite these enemies around very slowly, and eventually damage them enough to where they drop the gems, and then you pick up the gems for XP, and then you level up your stuff. But like the later attacks you get are just like an explosion happens 15 feet away from your character and doesn't seem to hit anything, and you're like, what? Is this doing any damage? Like, what the hell is happening here? It is awful. Okay, on Vampire Survivors, when you fight a bigger enemy, it'll drop a chest. When you pick up these chests in this game, you get like basically closer to unlocking the porn. And so there are 6 playable characters that you have to unlock with currency. And once you have picked up 3 chests, you can go into the gallery view and view the porn. If you take enough damage in a game, a naked picture of your girl will pop onto the screen for a moment, and the audio is, she says something, but the audio is so bad that I could not hear what she was saying. Also, I think it was in Japanese. But so once you're out of game, if you've collected 3 chests with a girl, then you can go look at the porn mini game thing, and basically you click on her until she gets sticky. That's pretty much how that works. And it's and then she gets to the I believe it is called the Ahiago face. I believe that's how you pronounce that. when you're done clicking. And then once you have done that, it goes back to the gallery menu. And there's one of those per girl. So the idea is that you would collect chests with each playable character and then grind to get enough gold to unlock the next character, which is a fucking hassle. I unlocked the second character, and instead of having a damage radius, she just throws a bottle attack, like a burning bottle attack thing, and that sucks too at doing damage. It's just the gameplay is so astoundingly bad. And then the porn part of it is, it's abysmal. It's abysmal. So I'm going to say, not really reviewing a ton of games these days, but I am going to say here, don't buy Hentai Survivors. It's a terrible video game. It does not satisfy in any capacity. Unless you have such specific tastes. I don't know. Unless you like seeing a disembodied penis go to work, then maybe that's right up your alley. I don't want to kink shame. All of that sort of stuff. Yeah, I played some HoloCure also, which is not pornographic and is a somewhat better game. I don't know. There are things about that game that I think are not great, but what are you gonna do? Yeah. So hey, taking one for the team here. Don't buy Hentai Survivors. The finals got announced, and this is they rolled out a Steam play test for the finals, and I believe you can still get in this. I want to say if you go over to the finals page on Steam and click on like request access, I believe you will get access, but I don't know for sure if that is still running. The finals is a game. What is it from Embark Studios? Is that the name of this? Sorry. Embark Studios in Stockholm. They showed Arc Raiders. I believe that was at the Game Awards last year, or was it part of Keeley's Summer Games Fest? It was at the Game Awards last year. Anyway, and that looked like fascinating from a technology perspective. They're like, hey, this is kind of ex-Battlefield, this and that, and all that sort of stuff. And Arc Raiders looked potentially very interesting. And then I guess that game kind of got pushed back a little bit, even though I don't know that they said too much about when it was even coming. But I think they were like, hey, that's a little bit further off. Anyway, here's the finals, another game we are working on. And then immediately launched into a playtest on Steam. So I played some of that. The first thing that the finals does is show you a big screen that says like, hey, please don't take screenshots or video of the finals, which I think is bold considering they seemingly are letting everyone just play it on Steam. So I assume that there's footage out there floating around, but they do the thing that playtests do where they embed little IDs that bounce around the screen to make it hard for you to capture footage anonymously and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it's a first-person shooter. It is class-based. It is very destruction-focused. And I think it looks really awesome. I think it potentially has a very good visual style to it as well. You unlock a pretty good bucket hat. That's my bar. Do you unlock a good bucket hat in this game? Yes, then it's got a good visual style. The playtest appears to have one map and one mode. And I am not sure how I feel about the mode, having played it a couple of times. But basically, you are playing one of three classes. It's like light, medium, heavy, and you have access to different weapons depending on what you pick. So, like the medium, I think only the medium can carry the shock paddles, the bring shock someone back to life, the Battlefield Classic. I am totally drawing a blank on what the fuck those things are actually called. That's terrible. But anyway, so like, you know, and then you have like an assault rifle and a goo gun. And in the trailer for the finals, they show some really cool stuff. There's some defibrillator. Thank you. Jesus Christ. My brain. This goo gun is cool because you can goo up a doorway to make it harder for enemies to get through and all that other stuff. So like a kind of area denial sort of thing. But also in the trailer, they show someone basically building a bridge between rooftops out of goo. And that's pretty awesome. It's pretty neat to see that. And it looks cool. Like the bubbly goo hardens really quick, and you shoot it out. You shoot the goo everywhere, and the basically you click until the girls get sticky. That's the finals. And, you know, the heavy, you can have a rocket launcher and all this other stuff, which is great because all those buildings blow apart really well. And so you can just blow holes through walls, throw grenades, do this, and just make your way through a level one way or the other. And as a match goes on, the objectives will move around. And so you're kind of going to different areas to fuck them up as you fight over cash. It's kind of a game show motif. And the mode is, they call it Cash Box, I believe, and it is you are collecting cash boxes and delivering them to drop off points, and then once you drop it off, that starts a timer. So another team, it starts out with 4 teams of 3, and another team can come up and steal your cash in if they get there before it is complete. And all of that sort of stuff. So that's kind of the back and forth of defending the drop off point to make sure that you get the points and all of that sort of stuff. It seems like if your team wipes, then you might lose some money as well. The respawn timers are brutally long, and I didn't love that. But it makes sense in the context of like you need to have a real penalty for if your team wipes, or if you wipe, you want to make sure that other teammates know that they need to get you up and all this other stuff. And so it's a round based thing as you work your way towards the finals. And so it starts out with 4 teams of 3. The last place team is eliminated in every round. So basically you play each match 3 times, or each map 3 times. They have like weather effects and stuff like that. So the one match that I won, it went from like morning clear, and then it was like afternoon cloudy, and then the last round was foggy, and so visibility was greatly reduced. And so you have the slow visibility going on, but also then you have all this destructibility means that like sometimes you will have a drop-off point that's on like the 3rd story of a building, and you can just blow out the stairs to make it hard to get up there, which means that the other team can just blow up the floor and make the cash box drop down to ground floor so that they can steal it that way. And that's interesting. Like mechanically interesting, I would say. And the destructibility is what you've wanted out of a Battlefield game for a good long time. These are much smaller maps. Do not get it twisted. This is a 12-player game at most. And all that stuff, but like the destruction felt great. And the, using goo, like running into a couple of situations of just like, I need to get up there and steal that thing before time expires, and I have no idea how I'm going to get there. Oh, wait, I'm going to throw a grenade here to blow a hole in this wall, and then I'm going to goo here to jump up on this and all this other stuff. The finals is really interesting. And I hope it has more modes, because I don't know that is a mode that is going to keep me coming back to play that game. Like that type of objective-based mode is really usually not my thing. But the technology on display in the finals, I think, is really awesome. And the destructibility, the goo gun, all that other stuff, just the physics of shit blowing up, and your ability to jump on top of things and like, oh, we need to jump on top of this rubble and try to get our way up here to the 3rd story of this building, to the 2nd story of this building, or we're gonna get up to the 2nd story, and then, hey, pull out your rocket launcher and just shoot the floor out from under it so that we can get to it, and all this sort of stuff. I think that stuff's really great. And so there's a trailer for the finals kicking around, and like I said, I am not positive if the playtest is still running on Steam. You might just be able to go get in on it. You might just be, it's one of those things where you might just be able to go click the request access button and then immediately download it. I'm not, the playtest is not. I'm being told that it ended yesterday. Okay. Thank you to the Marmalade on the Discord for that. Anyway, it was cool. You should have checked it out. Yeah, so I am looking forward to seeing more of that and what other maps might look like. But like I said, specifically, I would love to see some other modes and see how that stuff goes and see what they do with character progression. In terms of unlocks and stuff like that, it was a lot of cases of just like, this gun is okay for a base level gun, but boy, I want like 3 or 4 attachments to put on this. I want a scope. I want this. I want that. I want, like all this sort of stuff. The kind of mock battle passes they had in the playtest were all cosmetic things, including a sick bucket hat. So congratulations to the finals for having a good bucket hat at level 1 of your battle pass. And I was like, okay, good. Now I can make my character look good. But yeah, keep tabs on that, I would say, if you're interested in shooters and if you're a person who always cared about the destruction in the Battlefield games that had it. This is that. This has that style of destruction going on. And part of me, like, I wasn't able to in the playtest because we were playing the objective and all that sort of stuff. But like, I very much wanted to just get a rocket launcher and try to take down an entire building and see what that looked like. Like, okay, if I shoot this stuff out from under, if I shoot out the entire first floor of this building, what happens to the rest of this building? That's the stuff I wanted to know, but was not able to see it. So that's coming from Embark, which again you may remember as the studio, the newish studio that is working on Arc Raiders, which is another free-to-play game that they showed back at the Game Awards last year. And so I didn't even know the finals existed until this trailer just kind of popped up out of nowhere. So yeah, good on them, I guess. I don't know how many of them are ex-DICE people, if it's 100% ex-DICE or just, if it's like the leadership or whatever it is, but they are kind of being billed as like, hey, a bunch of people left DICE to do this. And you see some of it. Between them having a defibrillator and destructibility, you're like, oh yeah, I see what you're doing. And like I said, I've been playing Survivor IO on phones. That's not a URL, or they named the game without getting the URL or something. But it is, I guess, my understanding is the game that Vampire Survivors got a lot of its ideas from. And it shows. It is an incredibly similar game, but with so many free-to-play mechanics and gems and energy and like every free-to-play mechanic that you could layer onto a mobile game. These people have done it. You can avoid that if you're not playing the game 9 times a day or whatever and always out of energy or whatever. But it's a pretty good one of those. And so if you're looking for a mobile auto shooting survival game, I would check out Survivor IO if you have not. The evolved weapons, the kind of awakened versions of the weapons and all that sort of stuff are pretty good. Let's see. Why don't we take one more break here? We'll come back. We'll get into the news. Apparently, they're going to make a sequel to Cyberpunk. Apparently, we learned nothing. All right, we'll take one more break here, and then we will be right back. I'm like fumbling for like, wait, what am I? Okay, I'm clicking on this, and then I'm clicking on this. Hey, how often do you change your bed sheets, your pillowcases, your comforters, all that sort of stuff? I'm going to go ahead and guess the answer is not often enough. Did you know that traditional bed sheets can harbor more bacteria than a toilet seat? It's true. It can lead to acne, allergies, stuffy noses, and it's just gross. Miracle Brand offers a whole line of self-cleaning, eco-friendly bedding, such as sheets, pillowcases, and comforters, that prevent 99% of bacteria and require 3 times less laundry. Now that's nice. What else can the Miracle Brand sheets do for you? I'm glad you asked. These sheets have self-cooling properties. Using silver-infused fabrics originally developed by NASA, Miracle brand sheets are thermoregulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long so you get better sleep every night. And again, that silver is not just there for show. It's not just there so you can say, check out my fancy sheets. These silver-infused sheets prevent 99.9% of that bacterial growth, leaving them to stay cleaner and fresher 3 times longer than other sheets and less stink, which is nice. And hey, it would be pointless if these things were scratchy, horrible, feeling bed sheets, but no, luxurious comfort and quality, check. Miracle sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands. These sheets use a premium 500 thread count sateen weave. That's right. It's made with USA grown Supima cotton, which is one of the highest quality cottons in the world. So stop sleeping on bacteria. Clean sheets means less bacteria to clog up your pores, fewer breakouts, and other skin problems. Go to trymiracle.com/Jeff to try it today. And there's a special deal going on right now for you. Be sure to use the promo code Jeff at checkout to save 40% and get 3 free towels. Miracle is so confident in their product. It's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle brand. Go to trymiracle.com/Jeff and use the code Jeff to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/Jeff. And thanks to Miracle Brand for sponsoring the episode. All right, why don't we talk about the news? Okay, I'm going to try that again. Why don't we talk about the news? Yeah. Still a little gross in there. That's the wrong button. It's not the cough button. That's the B button. Close enough. They're going to make another Cyberpunk game over at CD Projekt Red. They went ahead and confirmed that this morning. And that is going to happen. I guess the Cyberpunk sequel will be led by a new studio in Boston. It is not currently under development. I don't know if they're still building this Boston studio, or I imagine. But yes, they are going to make another Cyberpunk. I mean, hey, the anime came out. People started playing that game in big numbers again, and all the other stuff. That game sold incredibly well. Of course, they were going to make another one. Hopefully, they learned a thing or two about that process with how Cyberpunk 2077 went. Yeah, I won't belabor the point here, but like I said last time we talked about it, they put out that patch, and I went back and played another 5 hours of that game post-patch, like the most recent version of that game, and had nothing. Like, I had quite a lot of problems. I had quests break, I had saves corrupt, I had I got stuck in a state where I could not jump. I lost my entire inventory of weapons. Like, just a lot, like for a game that has had this much time to be patched and all of that sort of stuff, for a game that has been around and been notoriously jacked for a very long time, for them to say, we've got this patch and we fixed even more stuff and yay, and then to play it and be like, this is still way too broken in incredibly specific ways. Like, just it is alarming. But the people have spoken. They are playing Cyberpunk like they never have before. Actually, that's not true. A lot of people played Cyberpunk at launch, and maybe they had a similar experience to the one that I did back when that game launched. A lot of CD Projekt stuff got announced. There is a new IP in the works that they're only referring to as Project Hadar. A new Witcher trilogy, which they had talked about new Witcher games coming. But I guess the new detail here is that this Witcher trilogy is going to be released across 6 years. So once the first game comes out, they will have 6 years to be done with that trilogy. We will see. Also, another game in the Witcher universe. I'm sorry, 2 more games in the Witcher universe, separately from this trilogy. That's a lot of Witcher. One is a game from the developers of The Flame and the Flood, called the Molasses Flood, and that game will be both single and multiplayer. And there's another game coming from a third-party studio that, according to this Video Games Chronicle recap of the announcements, is being led by veterans of the Witcher team. And that is only known as Project Canis Majoris. There was all that talk about a game focused on Ciri coming. So perhaps that's what that is. Or perhaps that's what the other one is. I don't know. There are so many. There are so many Witcher games now. We will see. And then one of the co-CEOs is stepping down from that position to try to become the chairman of the company, and some other stuff around that. Hey, there's stuff happening over there at CD Projekt. And yeah, I don't know. I would be interested in hearing more about a sequel to Cyberpunk. Assuming that they continue to iron out that technology. There are things about that universe that are very cool. And there are things about that universe that I think are really poorly shown and not really dealt with in a meaningful way in Cyberpunk. I think that the way that cyberspace is treated in Cyberpunk 2077 is really fucking boring. When you think about how cyberpunk or how cyberspace is often thought of and represented in cyberpunk fiction, and some of the things that happen in cyberspace in a lot of cyberpunk fiction, to have it treated as just like, yeah, you kind of go in and there's just, you're kind of basically just having a conversation and then leaving. Like I would be interested in seeing that aspect of the universe explored a lot more. And I would like to have a more cohesive story and storytelling and all of that sort of stuff as well. So, there are things about that universe, whatever. There are things about that genre that I am going to perpetually be at least slightly interested in. It's, call it a character flaw if you want, but I'm at least going to pay attention to most cyberpunk games that come out. But yeah, Cyberpunk, I feel like, was disappointing on a ton of different levels. And if they take another crack at it and kind of change that formula up and pursue more interesting targets and write a more interesting story, that could be all right. There's a lot of things you could do there. And then 9,000 Witcher games in development. Like, yeah, I guess like they did that TV show. And well, they didn't. That TV show came out, and so there's a whole another batch of people that are interested in The Witcher as a concept. So of course they've got to capitalize on that and try to make more Witcher games. They were going to do that anyways, but yeah, okay. So new trilogy, and then something from the Flame of the Flood developers, and then another one from this third-party studio that is described as a full-on Witcher game, I guess. A full-fledged release set in the Witcher universe to be developed by an external studio under the supervision of experienced developers who have previously worked on Witcher games. In terms of technology, we intend to use Unreal Engine 5 and the toolset created for Polaris. Polaris is the technology they are using to make the new Witcher trilogy. A 6-year publishing cycle starting with the release date of Polaris itself. In technical terms, the second and third part of the saga will be based on the foundation which we put in place for Polaris. By following this approach, we intend to improve our game development pipeline without giving up on any of our artistic ambitions. And then the Cyberpunk sequel is known as Project Orion. It is a Cyberpunk release which will further develop the potential embodied by this universe. Orion will be developed by CD Projekt Red North America which will comprise the newly created Boston hub as well as our existing Vancouver team. This studio is separate from the Molasses Flood, which is working on Sirius and is also based in Boston. Establishing a new studio will enable us to fully tap into the North American talent pool. Good for Boston. There were a lot of studios in Boston for a long time, and then it felt like, yeah, I mean, I think just about everyone I know who worked in game development in Boston has since gotten the fuck out of there. I remember going out to Boston for PAX, or even I remember going out to Boston to see BioShock Infinite. There was an event that they had that we were unable to attend, and then Irrational contacted me specifically and said, hey, do you want to come out and see this stuff we showed at this event and talk to Ken for a while? And yeah, absolutely, of course. And I went out and talked to that team and saw some of that game and all that sort of stuff. And then I had an extra day to just kind of kick it in Boston, and it happened to coincide with a Rock Band night. And so I showed up to that unannounced, which was very fun to just wander in and be able to, whenever you could bother John Drake in person instead of over the internet, it's a good time. It's been too long since I've been able to bother John Drake in person. And so anyway, but yeah, there were a ton of developers working in Boston, whether it was Harmonix. I mean, Harmonix is still there, but you know, but yeah, I feel like 99% of the people I knew who worked in game development in Boston have since gotten the fuck out of Boston. But there was a while there that I was like, man, Boston seems like a really fun city, and all these cool people live here. What if I moved to Boston? There was a time when that was something I could consider. And glad I didn't do that, because everyone, you know, that whole scene collapsed and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, I don't know. But I don't know, that city, I don't think I would go live there with kids. Maybe some of the, you know, some of the suburbs and stuff like that, you know, Rich Gallup lives out around there and stuff like that. And, you know, some of the areas in the Boston, outside of Boston, were kind of cool. Seemed like places you could maybe live and raise a family, but do not think I'm going to be moving back east anytime soon. Though, it is October 4th, and it is going to be 95 degrees today. Shit. Speaking of games that are probably happening because of television show tie-ins, there's rumors that have been corroborated by enough different sources now that this seems like that there's some more than just a little smoke on the streets to this. But apparently Sony is interested in re-releasing Horizon Zero Dawn for the PlayStation 5. We don't know if this is a remaster or a remake or whatever. I'm looking at Eurogamer's version of the article. This was originally from a site called MP First. And their reporting says that the remaster will bring Zero Dawn closer in terms of visuals to its successor, Forbidden West. Which to me sounds like, hey, we've got this Forbidden West, this PS5 version of this engine up and running. Can we drop the content and can we brush up and clean up the content from the first game and put it into this other engine? And like, yeah, you could, but also they patched Zero Dawn in ways that made it run really good on PlayStation 5 already. This is crazy. This is crazy. Like, this only makes sense as something that you think of as like, well, if you've got that Netflix show coming out, I guess you want to really, and that Netflix show seems to be very much about Zero Dawn and not Forbidden West, then I guess it makes sense for you to want to get that game back on shelves in meaningful ways. But this feels bad to me. This is one of those things you hear about and you're like, I wonder what studio is doing this? Is this something Guerrilla is doing themselves? Is this something that, is Nixie's going to do this? Is Iron Galaxy going to do this once they're done with the Uncharted PC port? Like what, what's the, who is going to do this work and why? Gamatsu, Video Games Chronicle, and some other folks have kind of corroborated the information from this MP First article and said, yes, this is happening. So it's kind of like enough different people have said this that it seems like that there's something going on, and that potentially the report also claims that an online multiplayer mode set in the world of Horizon is also happening for both PlayStation 5 and for PC. I think the reason this feels bad is because this game already runs on a PlayStation 5. Right? I mean, this is something that when we had with The Last of Us, and I think The Last of Us is kind of a weird situation as well, but the PlayStation 3 games did not run on a PlayStation 4. And so the lack of backwards compatibility gave you some kind of like, well, yeah, but you can't really play this game on our modern machine, and there's stuff we could do to make it better, and and then we're going to do it for PC anyway, so we might as well, there's a lot of stuff like that that kind of justifies some of the stuff we saw with re-releases coming from PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4. When a PlayStation 5 runs PlayStation 4 games, and when you've already taken that PlayStation 4 game and like spruced it up to make it run better on a PlayStation 5, it just seems like a very strange project. I mean, is this something that is it because Zero Dawn already exists on the PC that they have higher res assets available that they might as well put back onto PlayStation 5 natively? Like, is that the... So I guess I just look at this and go like, maybe this is a super easy project to do, and if they just put Horizon Zero Dawn Complete Edition back onto PlayStation 5 and clean it up a little bit more and what have you, then they have something on shelves timed with whatever this television show is, instead of just having to resell the existing version, which would be fine, honestly. I don't know. It just seems like a very strange project. That you start to think like, man, is that what we're going to have to, because obviously like Sony's getting into the PC in a big way, and that's smart of them. They're diversifying, and they're going to get out there and get their games in front of as many people as they can, and they're going to do it in this staggered way that continues to help them sell PlayStations, and it's sensible for what their goals are to do it that way, and all that sort of stuff. So whatever. It doesn't have to be day and date, but they are doing more PC stuff. Obviously, that Returnal stuff leaked pretty recently, and all of that. But is this the? Are we seeing? Do you think that this has anything to do with Sony being like, we've got to find a way to make as much money as possible on these single player games that are not going to be live service games? We have to find as many ways as possible to give people the opportunity to buy this product, because it doesn't have the legs that a live game does. It doesn't, it's not something that stays in the public eye the way a multiplayer focused game does, and all that sort of stuff. Like, is this the stuff that they're going to have to do to continue making those kind of like prestige, quote unquote, single player experiences? Which is fine, like, generally speaking, that's fine. This is a weird situation with Horizon because, like I said, that PlayStation 4 thing got a nice upgrade, runs really well on a PlayStation 5. So he was like, well, is this just, are you looking for a reason to put something, does this come out at $70? Do they package this with the multiplayer thing that they've supposedly been working on and use that as a way to make it a $70 game? Whatever. I don't know. We could talk in circles around it all day long. But I think the only thing that makes this click is the notion that this is tied into, you know, that this is something that they want to get out there to help, you know, maximize profits around the release of whatever this television show ends up being, right? I think that's the only way it makes, the only way it makes any kind of sense is to do it that way. Otherwise, like, you can play a very solid version of this game on a PlayStation 5 today. So, and then what happens to those players, right? Is there a $10 upgrade? Like what? Yeah, it's a weird. That's weird. Man, I am not. I feel ill-equipped to pick this story apart. And so I am going to mention that it has happened, but obviously I think there's a lot of stuff around it that we simply don't know. And it feels like we're kind of getting cryptic half versions of the story. The developers of Disco Elysium have been in the news. Specifically, because a lot of the names primarily associated with that game in terms of writing it and all that other stuff are no longer at the studio. This started with one of the founding members of that studio, Zaum. I've never heard it pronounced out loud. I have never heard it pronounced out loud, but I'm going to go with Zaum. Zaum? No? Anyway, started as kind of a cultural association, as they put it, and then eventually, once the Disco Elysium property kind of rose up out of that collective, I guess they went and founded a legit company to then make the game and push it in that direction and all that other stuff. But the gist of this, from Martin Luiga, man, I'm going to mispronounce a lot of things here. Basically revealed that writer, art director, designer from that game, Robert Kurvitz, Helen Hinper, and Alexander Rostov have not been at that company since the end of last year. And so a lot of the kind of original names have been, you know, and then he kind of went on to give a little bit more context, but without necessarily coming out and saying it, which I get it. Sometimes there are situations where you simply cannot come out and say the thing you want to say. And so you kind of have to tiptoe around a few things. But yes, the gist of it is, you know, from the sounds of things, it sounds like that people in charge of the money end of that operation perhaps grabbed control of the company and then pushed out the creative people that made that game what it was. And yeah, Disco Elysium, huh? That sucks. I guess I would say not that it matters, but I really respect Disco Elysium. I don't necessarily have a deep love for that game the way a lot of other people did. Those systems are really awesome, and it's just something about it didn't completely click with me. I think there might have just been other stuff coming out around the time. I always meant to go back to it when they put all the voice stuff in, and never did. But you know, maybe this is a good time to go back and check in on that. The remaining, I guess, whoever is left at Zaum issued a statement on the 3rd, that's yesterday, according to Eurogamer, saying, like any video game, the development of Disco Elysium was and still is a collective effort with every team member's contribution essential and valued as part of a greater whole. At this time, we have no further comment to make other than that the Zaum creative team's focus remains on the development of our next project, and we are excited to share more news on this with you all soon. So, And then Martin's post does kind of state that those people leaving the company was involuntary. And yeah, that's that sucks also, but those people will continue to go on and make additional games, and you know, the whole thing yeah, I don't know. I as long as these people are still hopefully involved in making video games, hopefully that they will have an outsized influence on whatever project they choose to take on next. I know some people found a developer that Robert Kurvitz's name showed up on, and we'll see what those original creators end up creating, whether it's together or separately. In the future, and then we'll see what ends up of this, you know, whatever is left of this studio. Obviously, it takes more than 4 people to make a video. Well, it took more than 4 people to make that video game. And we'll see what ends up happening on that end of things. But that sounds like a very shit situation. But again, there's a certain aspect of this, like, where because a lot of this stuff is not really written in a way that immediately points fingers. There is some finger pointing at the money people, at investors, basically saying that they wrested control of the company and really perhaps fucked it up. And we will see. I think it's, you know, it's one of those things, you know, it's one of those reasons why the name of a developer on a game isn't always, you know, because whatever that studio is working on, it'll come out and it'll have the same company name that Disco Elysium did, and they will probably bill it as the next game from the studio that brought you Disco Elysium. You know, they will almost certainly market it that way. And I'm sure that there are people at that studio who worked on the first Disco Elysium. They're, you know, it's not entirely untrue, right? But it's why you want to try to follow people and not the studio name on a box. That's not, you know, some crews stick together, game in, game out, you know, for a good long time. But nothing lasts forever, right? And so at some point it becomes like, oh, well, I liked the writing in that game. Who wrote this game? Okay, what did that person write next? Maybe I should go check that out. And it seems like that will be the thing we have to do, to truly follow people's work across this capitalism dystopia and hellscape that is, I was gonna say the video game industry, but it's every industry. Man, talk about industry is getting ravaged. I can try writing about video games for a living. Jesus Christ. Bad few weeks for that shit, huh? What else is going on? All right, I hate to put the most important news story forth, but Monster Energy has won a $293 million false advertising verdict against rival Bang energy drinks. That comes to us from Reuters. This lawsuit happened in California, and I guess back last week here, this happened. This is weird because it's Monster suing Bang because the labels on Bang's cans are wrong. And so the idea here is that the trial lasted more than a month, and the jury credited Monster's claims that Bang's super creatine did not contain any actual creatine, and that Bang misled customers about its benefits. And so Monster won $272 million for Bang's false advertising, $18 million on claims that Bang interfered with its contracts for retailers for prominent shelf spaces, and $3 million on claims that Bang stole trade secrets from former Monster employees that it recruited. Fuck. That's a lot of different bullshit out of Bang. And so I used to follow the CEO of Bang Energy on Instagram, and I had to stop because it was too much. That guy is a fucking train wreck of a human that I was like, I don't want to see this man anymore. He scares me. And I stopped drinking Bang as a result of that. And then once we started ranking energy drinks, I was like, well, I have to start drinking Bang again. And he seems like an awful person. So that was my take from following him on Instagram for a period of time. Was like, this man seems like he is horrible. And so, but I remember him claiming that the other drinks, because like Rhone energy drinks, I want to say is Coca-Cola. I think that is their energy brand. And he was out there saying like, well, Rhone is stealing our stuff and they're doing this and pointing a lot of fingers at other energy drink brands around all of this stuff and saying like, they're stealing our formulas to make Rhone. Oh, Coca-Cola owns Monster and Rhone. Okay, well maybe this makes a lot more sense then that this lawsuit has been happening. Anyway, so having this whole thing be go back the other way to where now Monster is suing them for some of the same stuff that he was trying to point fingers at. Bang denied that it falsely advertised its drinks, said super creatine is not important to a customer's decision to buy the drinks, and argued that Monster had not suffered any damages. Monster said super creatine does not contain real creatine or provide the health benefits of creatine. This is, okay, I'm reading this article backwards. According to the lawsuit, wow. Okay. Part of it was that the way Bang was carrying its product and trying to talk about the health benefits of Bang. The health benefits of Bang. Hilarious. According to the lawsuit, Bang advertised its super creatine as being 20 times more effective at reaching the brain than other forms of creatine, and said its energy drink can, and this is the quote here. This is a quote from Bang. Said its energy drink can, quote, reverse mental retardation and help cure disorders like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. That's what Bang, that's how Bang was selling Bang, I guess. You know, because they lost this lawsuit, so maybe they'll stop. But like, are you fucking kidding me? Anyway, again, and following that guy on Instagram, that's all very believable because he seems like a fucking absolute nutcase, fucking like that dude has grifter written all over him. And so, of course, not only would they make these claims, but also make them in the grossest way possible. Monster previously won a $175 million award from an arbitrator in a related trademark case. So, yeah, I don't know. Monster's been milking money out of Bang for a little bit here, I guess. Absolutely fucking crazy. That's the cutthroat world of energy drinks, you know? It's brutal out there. Big business. Big business. Also big business, Google. The Bang of ad tech companies. No. So if you remember last week, they announced that Stadia was shutting down. We talked about that on last week's show. And man, this is a mess. This is something that obviously, you know, hey, sometimes when things get shut down or when companies get purchased or, you know, like all this other stuff, there are a lot of situations where the people on the ground don't get to know what's happening until the public does, for reasons of secrecy or whatever it ends up being. I don't think it's a great policy in this case. But in a case where Google is going to just get out of the gaming business and doesn't care about the bridges it burns, I guess maybe this makes sense. People at Google found out, I guess, about a half hour before the public did. Phil Harrison called people together to let people know, like, hey, by the way, we're done. We're done with Stadia. We're shutting it down in January. And so people at Google were caught off guard. And then as a result, a ton of people that had been working with Google in one way or the other were also caught off guard, including developers that were like in the middle of getting ready to release their game on Stadia. We have had multiple games. No More Robots had a game called Heist Simulator that they had been working on that for a 2023 release on Stadia. Soccer Story was due to come out on Stadia in November. And Mike Rose of No More Robots gave a quote to Kotaku on this and said, we were also due to launch Soccer Story on Stadia in November, and that has money attached to it that we're meant to receive. It could be that we're still going to see that, but given that we literally can't release on Stadia anymore, I'm not holding my breath. Yeah, so they had a team meeting at 8:30, and then I think the blog post hit at 9. So basically they got people together, and that's, that's how layoffs work. That's how a lot of corporate mergers work and stuff like that. A lot of situations where it's like, hey, by the way, this thing is going public in 20 minutes. And that can be the way of things in a lot of cases. Google engineer Peter Elst tweeted about it at the time and said, it's a weird experience starting your workday and realizing the feature you've been working on for 6+ months and we're launching soon is no longer relevant. If nothing else, it does put things in perspective, onwards and upwards. Also some people at Bungie are kind of mourning the eventual loss of Stadia, because a lot of them, when they needed to check something in game, it's very easy to just fire up a browser and launch Destiny 2 on Stadia and jump in and go look, instead of firing up a console, finding a retail console if you don't already have one at your desk and all that other stuff. So like Bungie had been using it to like literally build Destiny 2, and it helped them with development. So that's got to be a bummer for them. Speaking of Bungie, they got on Reddit, I think that was yesterday or the day before, very recently, and started asking a lot of questions about like, hey, what do you think about alternative platforms like Linux and the Steam Deck? And we want to have a serious discussion about these platforms. And so hopefully they are hearing the right message that says, hey, make your game work on Steam Deck. That would be cool. Because it should. That would be great. That's my feedback that I'm giving here, and not where they're asking for it. So I apologize in advance for not giving it to them directly. But boy, should they fix that anti-cheat situation with Destiny 2 on the Steam Deck. I'm looking over the rest of this this Kotaku story here. Yeah, it's, there was a developer that had a release build ready to go into submission, and they had not heard anything at all. This is still Mike Rose. And yeah, multiple developers that had games getting ready to launch on Stadia. Necrosoft had, I believe, was Hyper Gunsport or just regular Gunsport was launching there. And then Hyper Gunsport was coming elsewhere. Is that what it was? I should go look. And just a number of games that are kind of caught in the lurch here. Not a great number of games, because it is Stadia we're talking about. But a lot of smaller developers that were, had done deals with Google that are now like, what the fuck? And with Google making good on the hardware and software purchases to end users and refunding everyone, you would like to believe that any deals they signed that had money attached, that they would just pay out and be like, hey, here's this money as a break fee. We're getting out the game. We're done. But also, if they're getting out the game and they're done, why would they care if they piss off a bunch of game developers, I guess, right? Onward and upward, as they say. So yeah, it's a shit situation. There's a quote sourced to a Google employee that remains nameless here. Basically says, with Stadia now shutting down, it's unclear what Harrison's future at Google will be. One employee told Kotaku they hope that if he does go, he's not the only one to leave. I don't want to stay under the same leadership, they said. I think they must be accountable for their mistakes. So, yeah, it's a shitty situation. It's easy, you know. It's very easy to clown on Stadia and go like, of course it was going to shut down. But also Google did deals and all this other stuff. You know, the Snipper Clips developers had like a game 2 days away from launching when the plug got pulled. You know, there's like, well, what the fuck are we going to do now? And you have to hope that Google makes it right for those developers. And we don't know. I have not seen anything from any of these developers saying like, hey, turns out Google's making it right for us or whatever. This also leaves some save data in the lurch. There is a way to check out your data from Google. And if you use the Google Takeout feature, I guess they are saying that you can export your save games. But who knows if those save games are in the same format that they would be for a Windows PC version of the game, or, you know, like if you can do anything with those saves. No idea. So, but there is a way to, I guess, to get your hands on that save data. Ubisoft, Bungie, and IO Interactive have come forward. This is Video Games Chronicle story. Saying that they are working on ways to bring the games you own on Stadia to PC through Ubisoft Connect. That's what Ubisoft is saying. We'll have more to share regarding specific details as well as the impact for Ubisoft Plus subscribers at a later date. Bungie says it has begun conversations about next steps for Destiny 2 players on Stadia. We will announce and send out information regarding Destiny 2 Stadia accounts once we have a plan of action. You know, that's the case because, you know, if you think about it, like Google's going to refund the people that bought the games. So they will get all of their money back. They will get their full purchase price back. But presumably Bungie or, you know, the Ubisoft, like those companies got paid off the sales of those games and they're keeping that money. So to them, those customers are already paid up. And so it would be nice if there was a situation, and not everyone's going to be able to take advantage of it. But if they were able to say like, oh yeah, okay, we're going to give you, we're sending you keys for the games you purchased on Stadia, you can redeem on Ubisoft Connect or whatever. And you can play there. In that specific case, I want to say Ubisoft purchases, no, maybe you have to be a Ubisoft Plus. So I say maybe you can migrate to Amazon Luna. Because if you don't have a PC that can run these games, them saying, here are codes for these games is fucking worthless. Unless you want to go buy a console or a PC, maybe they do a thing where there's like, hey, you could, you know, hit this button and tell us what platform you want to own Hitman 3 on, and we'll give it to you. Or whatever. But if you don't own any of those platforms, then it's like, okay, most of these games are on Steam. Well, no, most of these games are not on Steam. In the specific case of Ubisoft, Bungie, and IO Interactive, Destiny is, Hitman is, but most of these Ubisoft games are not on Steam. So, you know, going with GeForce Now, which ties into Steam accounts, would not be immediately possible unless Ubisoft Connect or works on GeForce Now. I don't actually know the answer to that question. But I do know that Ubisoft has an integration on Amazon Luna. So there is that. But a lot of these games, or some of these games have cross-play, cross-support, all that other stuff. So, you know, Destiny 2 players already kind of have a cross-play. Marmalade on the Discord says, okay, so a lot of these Ubisoft games are on the Epic Game Store, and Epic Game Store ties into GeForce Now. So there is a path for some kind of streaming solution there for people who don't own, for for people that don't own any PC or any gaming platforms to play this stuff on. IO Interactive just said, to all our Hitman fans on Google Stadia, we hear you. We are looking into ways to continue your Hitman experience on other platforms. I want to say they did some kind of, no, they didn't do cross-plat. Yeah, no, they did. They had to build some kind of cross-platform progression thing, at least on PC, because they had the Steam and Epic situation to work out. So they already did some work there that they could potentially leverage. It's a mess. I appreciate that Google at least built this stuff in the first place, and that the tech companies are trying this shit. I don't think any of it's there yet. I don't think any of it's ready for prime time. I don't think any of it is good enough to replace, and I don't know that it ever will be, right? I mean, the speed of light is the speed of light. So for the types of games that we play and enjoy today, I don't think that the cloud is a satisfying solution. And so you end up in a situation where you're like, okay, well, if the cloud is going to be the future of games, then you're going to have to retool a lot of games to play just fine, whether you're playing them locally or in the cloud. And does that mean you suddenly have a lot of games with very wide input windows and other things that help them account for cloud latency and all of that sort of stuff? Because that's not a good enough way to play games. Anyway, we've covered that before. The cloud stuff is a weird situation because it's like, who cares enough about games to want to jump through these hoops to use, and has like really fast internet and all this other stuff in ways that make them potentially able to use this cloud stuff, but then they refuse to go out and buy a $300 console or a $500 console to play it on. It's a weird. That's a weird use case. That's a weird consumer right there. I don't know if this is a sign that Microsoft is feeling the heat or not, but this story keeps going back and forth about Microsoft wants to buy Activision. They are attempting to do that. They have basically agreed to do all of that stuff, and they are going through a process in the UK where in the UK they are attempting to really look at this from an antitrust perspective, and Jim Ryan and Sony are trying to make the case that it is bad for video games for Xbox to merge with Activision Blizzard. And so Microsoft has launched a public-facing website that kind of outlays the benefits of this merger and it's a really interesting. It's really interesting to see this as a public website because it's linking to, like, there's a Phil Spencer interview here that, like, they've just got a button here that says Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer interview. And when you click on it, it goes off to Apple's podcast page, and a podcast that is not owned by Microsoft. It's just, here's an interview that Phil Spencer did. More to say on that, I think, hopefully in the near future. And like latest acquisition update, and kind of that's a link off to the Microsoft blog, and that's the September 1st post from Phil Spencer, kind of outlaying this stuff. And so I'll post a link in the various chats here for people, but it is like news.microsoft.com/Activision-Blizzard-acquisition is the URL. And they're saying, hey, benefits for game creators, more ways to get games in front of more players through support, investment, and better access to gamers, better revenue and fair marketplace rules through our App Store principles, greater flexibility in payment systems, and the experience they provide their fans. But like, that's not something that necessarily changes as a result of Activision coming into the fold. Well, I guess like that's presumably they would kill Battle.net, right? Or Battle.net's store terms would be identical to the Microsoft Store if they didn't want to kill it, because it's already God, that would be a fucking horrendous migration. Like, think about that username migration. I mean, a lot of people already have accounts on both, so they could just link them, and that would not be that big of a deal. But like, think about if Microsoft said, hey, we're shutting down Battle.net. You need to migrate over to Xbox Live for all of your account and ID information. Those are both massive player bases. And there would be some duplication that would be very easy to migrate. You just link the two together and boom, done. But like, man, that's an undertaking. There's a lot of tech undertaking there. Yes, World of Warcraft obviously factors into that. That would be a whole mess. They'd say benefits for the gaming industry. This is, bullet points about the benefits of this merger from the Microsoft point of view. Benefits for the gaming industry. More competition in mobile where a couple of big players dominate. So they're saying like, hey, by us picking up King as a part of this, that would be something. Emphasis on positive workplace culture and increased local investment from Microsoft in studios and creative ecosystems around the world. Yeah. But they've got like an embedded video from Bloomberg on here. Like it's weird. It's a weird page. Because they're like linking off to external news and saying like, see, we're, but it's like all of it is Phil Spencer out there talking it up. And and quotes from Phil and quotes from Brad Smith and and from all of the the kind of higher ups and stuff like that, links off to some of their other stuff. It's a weird page. But I guess like if they've got to try to make a UK legislative body who doesn't understand video games and doesn't know a goddamn thing about them, this type of top level stuff maybe is useful. If any of them ever actually see it, like I don't know. It's a very strange page. This again, my view remains largely unchanged, that there is so much competition across the industry, and that Call of Duty, for all of its sales and all this other stuff, I think that Sony trying to make the point that Call of Duty being Xbox exclusive or whatever, which Microsoft's saying they don't want to do. I think there are enough other shooters out there on the market. There are enough other things happening in gaming that, like, even if Microsoft did say, hey, Call of Duty, that's only on Xbox, I still don't think that's like and maybe this is me just having kind of a dim view of Call of Duty as a franchise because of how long it's been going on and how many rough years it's had and all the other stuff. I know it still sells super well, but again, these free-to-play games are juggernauts. The Fortnites and PUBGs of the world, and Apex and all this other stuff. Like, there are so many. EA is like, hey man, if they did that, we would love to have the PlayStation platform all to ourselves for these shooters, and all of this sort of stuff. But also, the point remains that like part of Call of Duty is free to play as well, and the way you run free to play games is by putting them out on as many different platforms as possible. And so let's imagine a scenario where, not Warzone 2, because that's a month out, but Warzone 3, let's say they continue to fuck this up and have to release a totally separate Warzone again in a few years and decide to make that Xbox only. If it's a free-to-play game, you want that everywhere. You want to put that fucker on Switch if you can do it. It's a weird, I don't know. Sony's position seems a little strange to me. Sony's position seems to me like them trying to fucking stir up trouble because they can. And I cannot blame them for doing that. This is a competitive business. This is a dirty business. And so I get it. But it just, I don't know, the stuff that they have said about why this deal shouldn't go through, just it doesn't, that continues to not really hold water when I look at it. So I don't know. Still strange that Microsoft put that page up in the first place, and I wonder if that means that they view this as like maybe slightly dicier than it was, now that the UK is going to take an even closer look at it. We'll see. Couple of quick stories here. This one from Video Games Chronicle. The rate at which characters level up in Multiversus has changed in the last patch. People were grinding through the character levels too quickly, and so just in one of the patches they were just like, yeah, we're gonna make it take twice as long for characters to go from level 3 to level 15, and that's it. I feel like that is the worst way to like announce this, to do this, to say like, we just made it take twice as long. Like no player benefit there. No, like, oh, hey, and as a result, we've added twice as many perks, or, like it's, sometimes I believe in, and again, this is a way that takes probably the least amount of work than anything that I'm about to suggest. But it's one of those things where it's like, you're just creating busy work. And the quote from them in the patch notes is, this is to help us make it a bit more of a journey. Come on. Yeah, we were finding the players could get to level 15 of the mastery track too quickly. This is to help us make it a bit more of a journey. I don't know. I always subscribe to, and this is something that I think when you talk about how you balance games and how you kind of make adjustments like this, it is better for players perception-wise, even if you're doing kind of the same thing, even if you're kind of achieving the same goals, right? Buffs feel better than nerfs, right? Like, if you can swing it, if you've got one character that's like doing some shit that's a little too powerful in some situations, it feels better if you take the characters that are at a disadvantage and buff them up in a way that they can manage it, right? And so everyone ends up feeling more powerful. As a result, everyone in the game feels just a little bit more fun. And everything just ends up feeling better when you go that way. When you make changes like, hey, this gun, we've made it take 5 bullets to kill instead of 4. Well, now that gun feels like shit, especially if you've been using it for dozens of hours. And that was the R301. God damn it! When they launched that game, it was fucking great. And then, all right, okay. And in this case, it's not a direct. It's not as direct of a thing. But if you could say, hey, we've extended the level path to 30 instead of 15. You hit mastery at level 30, and we've added a few additional bonuses, cosmetics, whatever, to fill out that track to make it more rewarding or whatever. Granted, at that point, you're taking assets that you were probably planning on selling and you're giving them away for free by putting them on a character's mastery track. But I feel like that's the thing you do to get it by players and have them go like, oh, cool. Instead of, what the fuck? They've also removed the word experimental from LeBron James. LeBron James is no longer experimental. LeBron James is normal, stayed even. And so I am less interested. I am only interested in experimental LeBron James. And so if he's no longer experimental, then I'm afraid I have to uninstall Multiversus. Especially because I didn't get in on grinding out these levels when it was easy to do so. Now I feel punished for not having played the game. On top of that, now it's like, oh, am I going to go back and level up these characters? Fuck no. I'm not going to play Multiversus. I still have it installed. I still occasionally play some Multiversus, but now I'm like, felt like I was going places. Now I guess I'm not. feels bad man, I think is what you say in that situation. Speaking of feeling bad, but also totally understandable, Eurogamer reports that OnRush, remember OnRush? Pause for answer. No one remembers OnRush. Yeah, OnRush is a driving game. It was cool. It had some cool ideas in it. It was a competitive driving racing game with a little bit of combat in there. November 30th, that is, a little under 2 months from now, that game will be going offline. This was a Codemasters game, so technically now it's an Electronic Arts game, and so the EA page that they use to talk about games that are going offline says, thanks to everyone who supported our game. It's been a rush. With player numbers in online modes dropping to low levels, we will be shutting down the servers from 30th November 2022. For OnRush fans who want to continue playing, offline modes will continue to be available. The game came out in 2018 and did not sell a damn thing. But it was a really neat arcade-style racing game. It had some cool ideas about combat and some other stuff like that. And it had some cool stuff going for it, but the developer got hit with layoffs pretty soon. Eurogamer kind of reminds us. Eurogamer reminds us that when that game launched in the UK, it sold just over 1,000 physical copies during launch week, which is a very low number. This game was also from the director of Drive Club, another banger. Whatever. I know. I liked OnRush quite a bit. Drive Club was a bad game. But yeah, whatever. If no one was playing it online, I can't sit here and say I could not tell you the last time I played OnRush. I think I was like 2 years ago or something like that. I think I launched it and went like, yeah, OnRush. But that was a cool game. So if you want to try to get some OnRush in online before those servers go offline, you've got a couple of months to do so. Yeah. That was a neat game. We'll see what happens next for driving games from EA. I guess that's technically an EA game now. They are about to... later this week, they are going to announce Need for Speed Unbound, the next Need for Speed game. The logo leaked. There's a teaser trailer kicking around. I'm sorry, no, there's a teaser trailer that is being revealed on Thursday, I think is what they're doing. A little tiny snippets of footage of the game is leaked out a little bit. Need for Speed Heat was on sale for an alarmingly low amount of money. For $3, Need for Speed Heat, probably an okay game, but I remember when that game came out thinking, man, they keep putting out these Need for Speed games that do not get it done. People in chat, yes, Ridge Racer Unbounded. Unbounded is a different word than Unbound. So Need for Speed Unbound, and the visual style on the logo and stuff like that just looks... Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. As I've said, I remain hopeful that they will figure out something cool to do with Need for Speed. Finally. Man, Ridge Racer Unbounded. This will only happen to people that have the type of brain rot that we all have in this chat, apparently, because people keep bringing up Ridge Racer Unbound. Ridge Racer Unbound is a that is a bad video game right there. Ridge Racer Unbound is just like, hey, what if we slap the Ridge Racer name onto this other like kind of destruction focused Western, like different developers, like totally different style. Oh man. That game in retrospect feels like a criminal act. And is that the last Ridge Racer? Unless you count the weird demo thing that, I guess the thing came out for Vita, right? Not the cool music thing, but there was eventually an actual Vita Ridge Racer game, the free-to-play thing that sucked, right? Hear me out. Ridge Racer Type 4-2. Done. That aesthetic, that style, a new JogCon controller. That's it. A proper re-release of Type 4 with new tracks, but like that style, that type of soundtrack, all of that shit, y'all. How about that? Why don't we do that? That would not be a, maybe not the perfect game to re-debut Ridge Racer, but actually also the perfect game to re-debut Ridge Racer would be one that followed in the footsteps of Type 4. Man, that game was good. Yeah, there's the guy that did the soundtrack, that did a lot of the music in Ridge Racer Type 4, put out a bunch of new music that is in that style. Just pick that up, put it in there. Ridge Racer Type 4 2. Let's fucking do it. Ridge Racer Type 4 had more going on, but part of it was the JogCon controller. It was the first game that tried to do something more than just like be an arcade game. Rage Racer had a little bit of stuff, but like Ridge Racer and Ridge Racer Revolution were just arcade games. And so those first two games, when they came out on PlayStation, they were like technical showpieces, but there just wasn't that much to them. And they're awesome, but Ridge Racer probably needs to be more. And in the later games, they found more and they did more. And they're like, okay, now we've got nitrous, I guess. And now you can unlock way more cars and you've got this whole branching path, weird career mode. And those PSP games, Ridge Racer and Ridge Racers, are great games. Those are great Ridge Racer games in the classic style. But Ridge Racer Type 4 is the game that tried to do a little bit more with like story and like sponsors, like tried to just build something more in there than just like, here's a port of an arcade game and you can race the tracks backwards, and so that for me was the first Ridge Racer game that truly clicked. That was the Ridge Racer game where I learned how to play Ridge Racer, was Type 4. Where I finally understood how drifting worked, where I finally understood how steering worked. Like I sucked shit at drifting in those first games because I just didn't, it's such a weird concept implemented so strangely. Like when you know it, but when you don't, you're like, this doesn't make any sense at all. Also, Ridge Racer 64, weirdly enough, not bad in terms of like, I was able to pick that up mechanically. And because I remember going up to Nintendo in Redmond or wherever, and sitting in their office and being shown Ridge Racer 64, and because it was being made there, I guess NST made that game or whatever, and they were doing 360-degree turns they were turning to the outside edge of the turn and just spinning 360s while whipping around corners, and I was like, what the fuck? Like I had no idea that was something that you could even conceive of doing in those games, because like I hadn't really quite grasped the way the steering and drifting and all of that other stuff works in those games. And seeing that helped me grasp it in a way of like, oh, when I let off the gas, it's going to whip me around the corner just fine. I don't need to think about the turn. I just need to think about the traction. I need to lose traction here and gain it here. And so it doesn't matter what angle I'm pointing, whipping around this corner, as long as on the other end of this curve, I'm facing straight. You've got to face it straight. And yeah, Ridge Racer is awesome. In conclusion, Ridge Racer is awesome. They should make another one. Need for Speed. There have been some awesome Need for Speed games, but I think I'd have to go look, but I wonder if we're reaching a point now where there have been more middling Need for Speed games than actually good ones. Like, we may very well be at a point now where there's a little bit more bad than good on that franchise. There's a lot of stink on Need for Speed. There's a lot of it. But it's been a while, and I think, there's a certain crowd of people that, will always be like, oh, cool driving game. That are not going to think about it too much. And not really think about like, hey, the last 5 of these have been fucking mediocre at best. So yeah, I don't know. I'm hopeful because I just, I want to see more arcade style racing games coming out and doing well and being good. I want to see more variety in that space, generally speaking. It can't just be Forza Horizon. Like, that formula is so locked down because it still has its roots in Forza and reality and stuff like that. Need for Speed, it still has real cars, but they're at least able to get a little bit further out there and do something a little bit crazier at times. It's no Burnout, but, what are you going to do? Just call a game Need for Speed Burnout. Let's do it. If the Need for Speed brand is the thing you need on a game to get it to sell, I wonder, they must do a lot of user surveys and testing, and EA, EA does a lot of user surveys and testing. We know that. And so I have to imagine that all of the data still says you need licensed cars. Because ultimately licensed cars is what's keeping them from making another Burnout. When they made Need for Speed games in the image of Burnout and tried to do like those multiplayer modes and tried to make those things sort of happen, they can only do so much because they have licensed cars. And so I think it would be nice to see a big budget Burnout, but also, yeah, Three Fields is working on that game. That is no longer called Dangerous Driving 2. It's not Wreckfest. It's not Wrecketeer. But it is something. All right. Well, all right. We will look up the name of the Three Fields game. I am, like I said, I'm looking forward to it. So much so that I forgot the name. Recreation. WRECK. Recreation. That is a good name. Except for that there are too many other driving games that have the word wreck in them. But what are you going to do? That game seems like it has some cool stuff. They're not exactly just going out there and making exactly another Burnout game. But it seems like that they are doing some really cool shit with custom track and some other stuff like that. So, yeah, a lot of interesting stuff hopefully to come from Three Fields in the nearish future. One of the things the Need for Speed games and Burnout games and a lot of EA games really were notable for was a lot of soundtrack stuff. And I've been thinking a lot about music in games. And so this ended up being a question I posed to the Jeff Gerstmann Advisory Panel over on the Discord. You can find out more about that if you want to join up. That's at patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. You can find more details on that. Go over to dopeassvideogames.com if you don't know how to spell my name. Sometimes I don't know how to spell my name. And it just, I don't know. I've been thinking about discovery in music. Like, how do people find music these days? It is, people don't listen to the radio the same way they used to. People don't, there's just like, obviously Spotify and some of these other streaming services have algorithms that will feed you music. And I have found the Spotify algorithm lately to be pretty piss poor. And it just got me thinking about like the ways in which people discover music in games. There's also an article last week on The Guardian from Keza McDonald talking about the same thing. Talking about like, hey, basically the article's, the headline is Video games introduced me to the Chemical Brothers. Now teens find music through Fortnite. And I wonder how much that's true. Is Fortnite truly exposing? Because they've done these concerts, this Ariana Grande stuff, and Keza cites Lil Nas X doing a song for League of Legends Worlds, and some of this other stuff. Like those are kind of bigger than average, but Kez also gets into the FIFA soundtrack and how that has been something of a tastemaker in some cases because of just how many hours people put into a FIFA game. And so the question I kind of had for the advisory panel is just like, have you gotten into any bands through games? And I had to sit and think about how that happened to me, like the ways in which that happened to me over the years. And probably the cleanest, clearest example I can come up with is Wipeout XL. Of course, the Wipeout XL came out at a time when electronic music really hadn't taken hold in the US the way it had in the UK and some other parts of the world. And so Wipeout XL was such a phenomenon in so many different ways when it came out on PlayStation. It was a lot of people's, it was my first exposure to Red Bull. It was my first exposure to the concept of an energy drink. When we first saw the Red Bull ads in Wipeout XL, we figured it was just another made up fake brand, just like Pfizer and the other things that are in Wipeout XL. And then come to find out, like, no, Red Bull really exists. And it's like fucking speed, man. And you're like, well, we've got to get some of that. What the fuck are we doing? And then we got our hands on a bunch of cans of Virgin Energy, which is basically the same thing and was available in the US from Virgin Mega stores before Red Bull was available in the States, at least around San Francisco. And so that was a case of not only was it like the first time you heard Firestarter, even if it was just an instrumental in the game, it was a whole genre of music. And then you had some limited cases, and there's really one in particular, a game called N2O that came out on the PlayStation, where the entire soundtrack was done by Crystal Method. And it wasn't new material. It was just like, hey, we took a bunch of Crystal Method tracks and put them in this game. And N2O, it's kind of like Tempest a little bit, sort of a tube shooter kind of thing. Not a great game, but it stood out in similar fashion to Wipeout XL because of that soundtrack. And I think for me and some of the other people I was working with at the time, it opened our eyes to an entirely different genre of music. I don't know if I would say I led a sheltered childhood per se. I was around a lot of fucking weird, crazy shit and growing up and all of that. But there was something about electronic music. There was something about dance music. There was something about the threat of ecstasy in the early 90s when I was kind of getting out of high school and all this other stuff. That something about electronic music seemed dangerous, which is funny when you think about it now, especially in the early 90s and stuff like that. But there was something about it that was just like, this just sounds like weird drug music, and this is really not my scene, and I don't know that I want to, the people that I do know that are into this just don't seem like good people, and there was just something about it that just was off-putting, which is, I realize that's a fucking insane thing to say, right? But yeah, there was just, I guess like it's the side effect of being raised in the fucking just say no fucking Nancy Reagan 80s. That like there's occasionally just like drugs were made mysterious and sometimes a little scary, and sometimes you're like, this music just feels like it is a vehicle for people to do drugs, and I don't know if I don't know. But also, I was living in the suburbs. There was not really a ton of exposure to that type of music also. you know. A lot of the people I remember some of the people I went to high school with, not people I was friends with, but I remember a popular kid at school, and this would have been, let's call it 91, 92, bragging about going to see Van Halen in concert. Early 90s, 91, 92. This isn't 1984. This is like fucking right now era Van Halen, right? This is the fucking like, this is the true depths of Van Hagar, the fucking worst, just the dregs of, Pepsi commercial Van Halen, exactly. And people were like, oh, fucking no way, man. Like, people were jealous that this kid was going to go see a Van Halen concert. And I, as someone who had been into Van Halen until, even as a kid, when 5150 came out, I was like, this is different and fucking sucks. And so I bought David Lee Roth's solo records for a little bit there. And I was like, these are not great either. And then it was like, wash my hands of the whole thing. And so the idea of someone being into Van Halen in the early 90s, even then I was just like, that is the fucking, you fucking suck, dude. Like, you already suck, but like, this is a good verification that you fucking suck, dude. But that was the type of fucking scene, the music scene that was like popular around where I was growing up. No one was into hip hop at all. I was like I felt like I was like one of like 4 fucking kids that liked fucking rap in any way, you know. For everyone else, it was just like, oh, when I was a kid, the Beastie Boys were big, and then when Paul's Boutique came out, no one fucking liked it anymore except for like me. I was the only person I knew that I didn't even know anyone that had heard it and didn't like it. There was no one was talking about the Beastie Boys when Paul's Boutique came out. I was just listening to it and going like, this is fucking phenomenal. This is a phenomenal fucking record. Anyway, that's where my head was at then. So like when electronic music kind of started coming around and, you know, as the 90s kind of wore on and stuff like that, it just seemed like it was not my thing. And it was just like, I don't know, these people seem fucking weird. And so, so I missed out on a lot of really good music at the time. But you would have some breakthroughs as that style became mainstream popular. You know, your CNC music factories and stuff like that, you know, that they kind of took some of that house sound, some of that electronic music sound and kind of made it more mainstream. And that stuff started to poke through a little bit. And so by the time Wipeout XL came out, it was a game changer. And I think the futuristic racing and all that sort of stuff helped make that music make sense because it fits so perfectly, because it sounded like the music of the future. The future sound of video games. Fuck London. The future sound of video games. And so it really opened my eyes to a lot of music going forward, but it didn't necessarily open my eyes going back. Another case that I can think of is I didn't get into Skrillex until he remixed the theme song from Syndicate for the Syndicate reboot. How about that? Or when they put out, alongside Mortal Kombat 9, there was an album that came out that was like, it was called like Songs Inspired by the Warriors. And they got a bunch of artists to do songs in the style of an individual character or something. So there's a track called Raiden or, you know, or whatever. And Skrillex did the Reptile track on that. And that was pretty good. And for whatever reason, that whole thing opened me up to the entire concept of like that style of fucking dubstep. Not in like the most serious way. It was like, this is fucking hilarious. This shit is fucking, they are clowning on music at this point, and I am here for it. I am having a great time listening to this garbage, but boy, I love it. Just absolute trash music, but I could not get enough. And yeah, so anyway, I went to the Discord, went to the advisory panel on the Discord and said, hey, what are your What are your stories on this front? Pat Bear gets in and says that he got into Dragon Force because of Guitar Hero. That's a good one. I'm mostly talking about like, you know, bands that are bands, not necessarily like soundtracks to games. But Jukio Kallo, of course, you know, Nanopus cites the Luftrausers, Nuclear Throne, and all that, Bleed 2, Fall Guys. That, you know, that music was a big discovery. And of course, you know, Mick Gordon comes up multiple times here. I remember when it was it was the cop Battlefield game. Hardline, Battlefield Hardline had a Spank Rock and Amanda Blank track on the soundtrack that I didn't even know was in the game. Until like there's one scene, there's a level where you're infiltrating someone's house and you're raiding it, and you go into one particular room and that song is playing, and I was like, wait a minute, is there a fucking Spank Rock? Are Spank and Blank on this fucking shit? God damn. It was a song I had not heard before, and I was very excited. Oh yeah, Sleeping Dogs had that Charlie Tuna track. Yeah, that's a good one too. A1 Stakes says Command & Conquer Renegade had a club-themed custom multiplayer level that had Stevie D's Rollin' Mega Mix playing on loop, and that got to me at a very formative age. Yeah. I wonder if people downloaded that Quake 3 level with Eminem and Dre in it, and if that got them into Eminem and Dre ever. Of course, the Tony Hawk games come up again and again. Virtual Balboa says that Thug introduced him to KRS-One and Del the Funky Homo Sapien. Yep. Yeah, that's fucking Iron Galaxy by Cannibal Ox is. So I was playing Thug yesterday, as you do. By the way, not necessarily a news story, but also in news. Retro Achievements, the site that are community making achievements for old games, added support for PlayStation 2 games this week. So if you're running the appropriate PlayStation 2 emulator, you can log into your Retro Achievements account and get achievements in Thug, which I did. It's like 80 different games that are supported so far. Pretty awesome. And then I saw that the track Iron Galaxy by Cannibal Ox is in Thug, and I had a moment of just like, when I know that I know the studio is named that way because of that song. I'm like, I wonder if Thug had anything to do with it. Probably not. I'm gonna say probably not. Dave Lang seems like a guy that was listening to Cannibal Ox well before Cannibal Ox was in video games. But yeah, of course, for me, the Tony Hawk 3 soundtrack was kind of just burned into my brain. Lang, get on the show. Yeah, no, yes. So next week, I was going to announce this at the end of the show, but I believe Dave Snyder is going to appear on the show next week, and then I have to get in touch with Dave Lang and a few other people. I've been talking to people off and on over the months saying like, hey, you should come on the show at some point, and got a lot of soft yeses that I have not scheduled people. So spent some time yesterday talking to Dave Snyder for the first time in a while, reminiscing about some stuff. Seemed like an appropriate day to do that. I don't know why. To shake our heads and be like, but hey, yeah. So we're hopefully we should have Dave on the show next week. Very exciting. Very exciting. Let's see other music things here. Legacy by the Gone Jackals from their album Bone to Pick was used as the intro in Full Throttle. John cites that. Jeff with 3 Fs, good to differentiate there, says the Lumines soundtrack introduced me to a lot of greats. Like, yeah, totally. That Lumines 1 soundtrack is fucking it's like just a fucking, there's a lot of fucking bangers on there. And then when Lumines came to the 360? Is that when Heavenly Star showed up in it? The song Heavenly Star by Genki Rockets. I believe that is when that made its way into a Luminef's game. That is Tetsuya Mizuguchi and some other people, I believe. There are multiple Genki Rockets albums I discovered recently. I was like, wait, shit. I just thought there was the one, or like the 2 songs or whatever. But like, there's quite a bit of Genki Rockets out there, which is kind of cool. Let's see here. Virtual Balboa also says, I use the headphone jack on my Genesis to record the soundtracks of Revenge of Shinobi and Streets of Rage to tape. You could say those games turned me on to electronic music. Yeah, though. Man, when the pandemic started, I think it's fair to say a number of people, I know I was in a pretty fucking dark place there for a lot of 2020, you know, as the year wore on and all that sort of stuff. Like I just, you know, my daughter was in a leg brace for a lot of that year because she had minor hip dysplasia that has since been corrected. But at the time, it was just like, okay, we can't go out anywhere. My daughter is in this hip brace, and at some point, we have to take her back to the doctor to see how she's doing. And like, they're saying, hey, don't go to the doctor unless it's a fucking emergency because of how bad the hospitals are and all this other stuff. And so there's just a lot of fucking crazy shit going on. And I'm not normally a person who turns to things to get through tough times, I guess I would say. Like, like people like, oh, what's a song that got you through a tough time? Or what's a game that you turn to? I think there's even an email question this week that was like, what's a game you turn to when times are tough? Like, I don't have a great answer to that question specifically, but I was playing Streets of Rage 2 on the Mister. They had added the ability. So this is something that is called MSU1 when it's on the SNES. And it's the basic idea is, what if you replaced the soundtracks in SNES games with CD quality audio? And there's a Genesis equivalent to that format, whose name escapes me at the moment, but it's the same basic idea of like, take a Genesis game, replace its soundtrack with CD quality audio. Oftentimes it feels wrong because there isn't good equivalent CD quality audio for a lot of those games. You know, there's a lot, obviously, fucking OC Remix has been around for decades, and so people have done a lot of versions of a lot of game music that you could put in there, but it doesn't always sound great. Anyway, I found myself playing Streets of Rage 2 in this format. MD Plus, I believe it is called. Yes, I believe you're right there. And I just kind of had this, you know, I had been reading interviews with Yuzo Koshiro where he had been talking about the process of the Streets of Rage 2 and 3 soundtracks, and he was just like, yeah, you know, we were going out to clubs and fucking listening to all this fucking music, and then, you know, we wanted these games to go hard in that specific way, and that's not an exact quote. But you know, like the inspiration for the soundtracks for Streets of Rage 2 and 3, and how you can hear, you know, some of those inspirations very directly in some of the music of the era. And so some of this gets back to what I was talking about with electronic music seeming dangerous and me missing out on a lot of electronic music and a lot of stuff like that. After listening to, after playing through that CD enhanced version of Streets of Rage 2, I was like, man, this is cool, but like I would much rather just listen to the original soundtracks, and they've put out those soundtracks on vinyl, and they've done a lot of different releases of those soundtracks, and so it's very easy to have good high quality remastered versions of that music that sounds appropriately bassy. not something that sounds like it got recorded out of the headphone jack on a Genesis, for example. You know, so a cleaner recording of that stuff that has maybe been mixed and mastered a little bit differently to kind of be better listened to in a music environment, I guess I would say. And for whatever reason, there was a pretty direct moment there that night where I went from listening to the Streets of Rage soundtrack to listening to the KLF. And something happened to me that night, and it all clicked in a way that it hadn't before. Like the early 90s, the acid sound that always sounded so menacing before. All of it made sense through the context of the Streets of Rage 2 and 3 soundtrack for me. And I found myself just listening to the KLF nonstop for most of the rest of that year and since. And the KLF, it wasn't really huge in the US. You know, the 3 a.m. Eternal was a big song, and that was the only song I had heard because it got a pretty significant MTV play. But you think of it as a rap song. You think of it as something that is in the vein of, you know, like I said, the same way CNC Music Factory got big, and you're like, this has kind of elements of dance music and all of that sort of stuff. And yeah, it's probably the most profound kind, and it's a very indirect discovery, right? It's not like the KLF was in a game. I mean, there is a sample in Space Giraffe. And then Jeff Minter sang on a KLF on one of their, when they came back with Jarvis Cocker and anyway, Jeff Minter is singing background vocals on that, which is fucking crazy. Yeah, so it's not, like I said, it's not a direct connection per se, but it's something, it ended up being this really deep, weird thing that fucking happened to me. And I fell into that catalog and the mystique. And if you don't know the story of the KLF, they made songs for, let's say, 2 or 3 years as the KLF or as the Justified Ancients of Moo, and then basically fucking bailed and fucking said, fuck this, we're done. Whether they were burned out or whether it was just like, this would be the coolest fucking thing to do, or whatever the, you know, you could. There's a good kind of entry level documentary out called "Who Killed the KLF." It would be worth taking a look at. They went and built. They burned £1 million. That's money. And tried to pass it off as art, and then went around and talked to people about the art they did, and a lot of people were very angry with them for burning all the money. And it's a very interesting story, and they have deliberately left parts of it out, and they have deliberately obfuscated their reasoning for a lot of stuff. They had a very interesting run in the music industry, even before, you know, it's a really unique and strange story. So yeah, that documentary is probably a good fascinating entry into that, and their exit of the music business, of fucking Bill Drummond fucking firing blanks out of a machine gun at a crowd at a fucking British music award show, and then them basically vanishing for 23 years. It's a fucking fascinating fucking story, and I fell into it as deep as one could. And that's all because of Streets of Rage. And so that's probably, again, that's a weird, that's a weird fucking roundabout way for this shit to happen, but it happened to me, and it got me through some very fucking tough times. A lot of fucking dark nights of me listening to a lot of that stuff, and a lot of the KLF catalog didn't get released officially, and when they disappeared, they took all their stuff off sale on top of that, so you've got just like remixes, and then you've got fan remix projects and all this stuff. And at some point it gets difficult to parse like what's really them and what's not, because they disappeared in such a fucking crazy way. You had music coming out that people were I think that's the KLF and stuff like that. Scooter, the fucking German fucking hardcore act, references the KLF all the time in such a way that fucking apparently at one point people were accusing them of really being the KLF. At some point, if you listen to the KLF long enough, you accidentally end up getting into Scooter. I did not intend for this to fucking happen, but it fucking happened. Ugh. Yeah, so when I say I got fucking a little weird over the last few years, and then my musical taste kind of fucking blew out in some very unexpected ways over the last 2 or 3 years, that's that's kind of what I'm talking about. That's part of what I'm talking about anyway. Yeah, so anyway, Marco says that yeah, definitely echo all the Tony Hawk sentiments. Ska is damn good, and those games got me into it. Yeah, and then the ska is working as intended, for sure. Of course, GTA, as comes up multiple times. A lot of people saying Vice City kind of got them listening to, 80s music and stuff like that. Kairu says, whenever Kids in America starts playing, I can pretty clearly see Vice City in my mind. Vice City was interesting, and this is probably an age thing to a certain extent or whatever, but like growing up in the 80s as a kid and watching a lot of MTV, you get exposed to all those songs that now, for whatever reason, will get played over and over again until we're all dead. Like some of that, like the 80s became eternal. I mean, I guess it makes sense when you think about the distance in years or whatever, but the 80s became eternal in the way that the 50s seemed for a good long time. And now the 50s are not as like prevalent as they were in the 80s and 90s, which is good. But the 80s just feel like they're never truly going to die. And I think that's okay. Like I like a lot of 80s music and stuff like that. I think that there's the Vice City soundtrack is like a really good this is reductive, but it's like a really good starter package for 80s music. You know what I mean? Like it's a bunch of good greatest hits compilations across a lot of different genres and all that sort of stuff. But there's just so much. But like as someone I was 10 in 1985. MTV, I want to say, started in 84. And so there was just so much, like, I watched MTV all the time. I watched music videos all the time, especially once Yo MTV Rap started and all of that sort of stuff. So, I was kind of like the exact right age to absorb all of that shit. And yeah. Dental Plan says, Owendon got me listening to Japanese pop music, even though it was mostly covers, I think. Yeah. The first game and Dental Plan says, the first game I ever worked on was Guitar Hero World Tour. Fun fact for me and the music in that game, the first time I heard Paul McCartney was Wings. I didn't know he was a Beatle. So anytime I think of him, I think of Wings before Beatles. I'm to say, so I didn't give a shit about the Beatles until Beatles Rock Band came out. And it was something like the way you can pick apart those songs and those individual parts and just play bass and stuff like that and really think about the bass line in this Beatles song, or like, hey, this vocal harmony here, and the way you get to kind of hear those stems a little bit differently or think about the parts of those songs a little bit differently by virtue of it being a video game. That was the thing that made me understand the Beatles. That was the thing that made me go like, oh yeah, the Beatles. Yeah. Yes. These songs are fucking crazy. Like you get it. You're like, oh yeah, okay. I think I understand why the fucking Beatles are a big deal. Because like these songs, like the parts of these songs, like yeah, no, this is fucking good shit. And that game itself, the graphics, the stuff they did in that game, I think is really awesome. My wife is a huge Beatles fan, and I don't know that I would have been able to talk to her as effectively about music. And she's a big Paul McCartney fan specifically, if not for Beatles Rock Band. But I would also say, I think I also prefer a lot of Wings stuff and a lot of Paul McCartney's solo stuff over some of a lot, like a good amount of the Beatles catalog. I don't think the song that he did for Destiny is particularly good. I don't think there's anything good on McCartney 3, except for potentially the Beck remix of one of the, whatever that song was. And I legit like Temporary Secretary. That's not a fucking bit. I think that's a good song. I think it's a cool fucking weird fucking song, especially when you think about when it was recorded and what technology was like when that song was recorded. I think it's a fascinating fucking track. Especially when you put it in the context of like, this was made by one of the Beatles. Yeah. Okan says Ken Ishii from Area 3 and Rez. Yeah, the Rez soundtrack. I love the Rez soundtrack, but it didn't automatically make me go out and seek out other music from the people who did the tracks in Rez, I guess I would say. And also the Chemical Brothers from Burnout Revenge. Yeah. Famed Elga says Disaster Piece through Fez. The Fez soundtrack is fucking some untouchable ass music. Those are, I am just about ready to replay Fez. I'm gonna have to look stuff up because, you know, there's a lot of stuff I've forgotten, and I'm probably not going to sit there and manually decode the stuff you have to decode anymore. I'll probably just look it up. But I am just about ready to replay Fez. The problem is that it's hard to replay Fez when you can't fly. Once you get used to flying in Fez, it's very hard to go back to an unfinished, like not a new game plus fucking save of Fez. Hamlock says Super Hexagon got me into the chiptune genre. Yeah. Wacky Deli says Borderlands 1 and 2 had good opening themes. Yeah. Is that Cage the Elephant? They're doing both of those, or is it like that specific? Like, it feels like that style of music was big for like that exact period of time, and then kind of poof went away. I just got a press release that mentions Disaster Piece. I can't remember the name of the game, but there's a game coming out or out very soon that Disaster Piece did the soundtrack for. A1 Sticks also says the Fallout games made super old-timey music viable to me in a way it totally never would have been if not for the weird decision to include that music in the games. Yeah. I never would have guessed that the 30s had some real bangers if you look for them. Yeah. I don't know if it's still there anymore, but you know, when satellite radio, before they took the low numbers on the dial and turned it into the popular stations of like TikTok radio or whatever, they used to literally have like channel 4 is where the 40s music is played. You're like, what? And you could get a lot of Fallout vibes from some of those stations for sure. And Small Rewarder says that VVVVVV is the game that got them into the chiptune genre. That's another great game soundtrack. That's a great game soundtrack. VVVVVV is an absolutely awesome video game. Such a simple concept, but what a fun, cool world that game is, and what a challenging, cool fucking thing that is. And a great soundtrack. Just a great soundtrack. But yeah, it's all of this kind of spawned from, I saw this Kez McDonald article in The Guardian, one, and then also I have been thinking about and this is something I can't know, right? Or, you know, I don't know. Like I'm in my fucking mid 40s. Some would say late 40s. My wife would say late 40s because she's mean. No, she's not. And so there's like this is just this feeling of just like, what are the kids actually fucking listening to? But more importantly, how do they find it? Is it the shit that plays at the fucking on the speakers at the fucking mall? Is that it? No. Is it? And because I've been using TikTok a lot lately, and so I think about the music that's on TikTok. It's all over the place. You know, it's that Kate Bush song. It's a ton of different shit from across time. And so that's a theme I keep returning to over the years. Is just like, what the fuck is happening to music? You know, are people, you know, is it Spotify playlists? I'm sure for a lot of people it is. It's like whatever Spotify algorithm, you know, fed them is feeding them music, and they're just kind of listening to it. But also they have access to everything. So how do you sift through that and find it? Yeah, and exactly. Is everyone just listening to fucking Taste the Biscuit? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. And all that sort of stuff. So I don't know. Like that's something that is just like, how does this happen? And I'm sure video games play a role, right? Because people play a lot of games, and a lot of games have licensed soundtracks. And of course, you know, Fortnite has done its stuff, but Fortnite has done its stuff with like major, super fucking popular artists, right? And Keza, even in this article, kind of says like, you know, how many people, I mean, obviously millions of people tuned in to hear this. So it probably was, well, I guess like maybe this could have been me, right? Like I know of Ariana Grande. I could not name a single Ariana Grande song. That goes back to even, you know, who was, you know, he's old at this point, but like, you know, like Justin Bieber and stuff like that. Like I cannot tell you a single Justin Bieber song. I could not tell you the name of it. Someone in chat over here saying, my 9-year-old loves Cardi B. Found her in the YouTube history. Yeah. Yeah. Remember when Cardi B was just on Instagram and not also a musician? Those were the days. She had a fun Instagram presence. Kids and teens. Okay, who's this? Bola Whirl? Yeah, the color on this monitor is a little dark. Kids and teens in Germany listen to German gangster rap. There is nothing else. It's blaring from every car and every cell phone, so there's practically no way of getting any other genre but that anymore. Yeah. Like, how many people are, you know, you don't hear a lot of people talking about the Drain Gang that much anymore. But, I don't know. Blade's all right. I don't know, it's not my favorite shit, but that shit's all right. Yeah, so I don't know. That's just, like I said, that's just something I think about here and there, you know, like how the fuck are people finding music these days? And is there, you know, like, is it just algorithms? Because algorithms are poisoned, right? I mean, Spotify can insert whatever the fuck they are paid to insert into these things, and I'm sure that they do it, right? I mean, why wouldn't they? Like, oh yeah, well, this record label wants this song to be big, and so we are gonna insert it into this playlist that has a ton of listeners. That happens to users on Spotify that run popular playlists, right? Like some of them are getting paid to fucking slide other songs into that shit. And then you watch some fucking TikTok video where someone's trying to explain fucking drift funk. And you're like, what? Okay, so people liked the fucking Memphis sound, like the 3/6 style stuff and some of that, and then they took that. Okay, what fucking weird backwards ass way did people get into fucking, okay, we're gonna speed this songs up and then put videos of Russians drifting in cars? Fantano was very influential. Yeah, but like that's with people who already like know about / care about music, right? I mean, that's like, yes, Anthony Fantano, yes, he does his thing, and that's cool, right? But like there are fucking millions of people out there listening to music that don't fucking know like how they're encountering it, right? They're just like encountering it somewhere and going like, oh, this is cool. Oh, this is cool. I'm gonna get into this. This is cool. Like, sorry, I am still still a little sick, I guess, or still a little stuffy. I don't know. But yeah, obviously, yeah, there's Pitchfork still around, and some people probably still look at Pitchfork, right? There's probably still a crowd of like now older kids using like Rate Your Music and all that sort of stuff, right? Like those scenes still exist in some way, shape, or form. But like, I don't know. For me, it was always like, what is playing on MTV and what's playing on the radio. And that was how you got exposed to new music. And so I think that's the thing I think about is like, you know, is it word of mouth? Is it just like someone on a Discord going, hey, check this fucking crazy shit out? Like I've gotten into some fucking shit that way. And all that sort of stuff as well. So I don't know. Yeah, there's just a lot of, but like there's a difference between people who are extremely deep into this that are just like every week, like someone chat is saying, I just listen to new releases every week. Like, yeah, you could do that. I think, you know, people that are like trying to find stuff actively, I'm thinking about like more of like the kind of passive influence sort of stuff, and what form does that take? Because obviously a lot of people have Spotify or Apple Music accounts and stuff like that, but like I know like a lot of people just listen to music on YouTube. And so like the YouTube algorithm is probably powerful in an outsized way at exposing people, because that's, you know, free ostensibly, at exposing people to different types of music. And so you've probably got a lot of people being passively exposed to different types of music that way. But again, that could be from across time. It's not necessarily someone forcing the newest, latest on you. It's not someone forcing like, okay, we're gonna fucking make this motherfucker go triple platinum. Like that's not a thing anymore, right? So anyway, whatever. I'm sorry. I could talk about this for fucking ever, but but let's get into a few emails here before we go. Thanks to everyone who contributed on the advisory panel, talking music in that music thread there. I'm glad we talked about it. All right, let's see here. What do we got in terms of emails? Hey. podcast@guard.bike is the email address. Send in your emails to me right now, and we'll check them out, next week, right? Let's see. Nicolas writes in and says, I grew up playing games on the Macintosh LC in the early 90s and didn't get a PC until 98. So up until then, I was stuck playing games on a less game-focused computer system, and I was very envious of the games available on the PC. Of course, I tried telling myself and my friends that the Mac was amazing for games. Prince of Persia 1 looked amazing compared to the PC version. Tower Pete launched on the Mac. Bungie's Pathway into Darkness and Marathon were Mac exclusives, at least for a little while. And Glider was so fucking amazing. The slap bass when you finish a level is still playing in my head. Needless to say, I was in a rough situation and hated the fact that I was missing out on so many games for the PC. All Mac releases were always at least 1 year behind. So I was wondering, were there ever any games for the Mac you wish you could have played? Please help me in my childhood self-esteem. Yeah. Mac games were fucking rough. Mac games were fucking rough. So I had never seen a Macintosh until I worked for a magazine in 1994. I was 19. And back then, desktop publishing was done on a Mac. And the only web browser that you could use was, I think Mosaic was only available for the Mac there for a little bit even. And so it was like a very meaningful time for the Mac. And we played a game called, I believe it was called Spectre VR, which was kind of a polygonal tank game. And it had LAN play. And so we occasionally, and by occasionally I mean like twice, played Spectre VR. And it was like, this is cool. And then we were like, man, we got to get some fucking PCs up in here. What the fuck? And I had the only DOS machine, Windows, I guess it would, well, no, this was pre-Windows 95, so it was a DOS machine. I had the only DOS machine in the office because I was the one writing articles about sound cards and CD-ROM drives and shit like that. So I was the only person who had a proper fucking computer in that office. And it was nice. But I also had whatever Mac Quadro, whatever the fuck it was. I don't know. Mac games always seemed slow and broken compared to a lot of their DOS counterparts. There were some games that definitely came out looking better there. And of course, Bungie, like Marathon was a very big deal. Marathon was like the one thing that Mac users would try to hold over the heads of PC users and say, well, we've got Marathon. And I remember playing Marathon for the first time. And by this time, it had been around probably for a year or something. And I remember playing it and going like, I don't really see what the big deal is here, guys. Like, you've been talking up this Marathon so fucking hard. And yeah, it's okay, but fucking come on. Some fucking, I'll be over here playing Blake Stone. How about that? I'll be over here playing a good performant version of Doom. How about that? But yeah. Marathon, when they ended up doing those re-releases and stuff like that, I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Like, I get why people, especially fucking Mac users that were starving, I get why they would glom onto the Marathon games so fucking hard, because really, what else did they fucking have? Dark Castle, I guess, right? I don't know. The Mac, early Macs were weird machines. I did not own a Mac for myself until 2008. When when I joined Whiskey Media, and I guess I technically was never a Whiskey Media employee. It was kind of technically a separate, Giant Bomb LLC was technically a separate company at the time. But anyway, I bought a MacBook Pro because I showed up at that office and they all had Macs and they were building websites and doing terminal window shit with a Mac, and I was like, you can do that now? And they're like, oh yeah, it's basically a fucking Linux machine. I'm like, oh well, shit, that'll be fun. And so I went and bought a MacBook Pro, I guess. Anyway, Avarro from Cincinnati writes in and says, hey Jeff, remember those weird RF switches? When I was growing up, we didn't have an NES. We had what was called a family. I was born in Colombia, which I later learned was just a Famicom. Anyway, I remember those little adapters you had to hook to the back of the TV before we had the yellow, red, and white cables. My question is that as old as it got, or did you have a different hookup before? No, our RF was the standard prior to everyone having a VCR and having composite cable inputs and stuff like that. Just a coaxial cable, and then turning your TV to channel 3 or 2 or 4, depending on where you lived, all that sort of stuff. The cool thing about the NES RF adapter is that it was all automatic. And so before that, in the Atari days, you got these RF switches that literally had a switch on them. That one side said TV and the other side said game. And so when you wanted to turn on your console, you had to reach behind the TV and slide that switch. And a lot of those older ones, it wasn't just a coax screw-on thing. It had these 2 alligator clips. And you had 2 screws on the back of your TV, which is where you hooked up the antenna. And so you'd have to loosen those screws, put the alligator clips on the screws, tighten the screws. It was the same basic connection as the RF, the coax screw-on, but that's basically what it was. And so you had to reach behind the TV, and half the time you would hit the switch too hard, and one of the clips would fucking come loose, and you'd have to go back there and fucking fix it, and that sucked. For a while, I was moving an Atari between 2 TVs a lot, and so we took the RF switch, cut the weird clips off of it, and put actual fucking alligator clips on it that you could just like unscrew the screws and just pinch them onto it. Had to like wrap them in electrical tape so that the 2 sides didn't touch and all that sort of stuff. It was a scene, man. That if I'm not mistaken, is as old as it gets. Even those old Pong machines and shit hooked up basically the same way. Let's see here. Nathan in Calgary, Alberta, Canada says, as an A's fan and a Mr. Show fan, you were qualified to make this call. Was Ricky Henderson better at baseball than David Cross was at comedy? You know, Ricky Henderson, a great base stealer. The greatest base stealer, some might say. I happen to think that David Cross's output post Mr. Show has been pretty uneven, as I don't really care about Arrested Development. It's fine. I think some of David Cross's stand-up is really good, and I think that sometimes, like, he just went down a very specific path with that stuff in a way. Just like, okay, yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I'm with you. But at the same time, what did Ricky Henderson do? Yeah, that's a good point. After post baseball, what has Ricky Henderson done? Not much. Which honestly sounds great. Like, hey man, make your fucking mark and then just fucking kick back, right? No, I think David Cross's albums are generally pretty good. And all that sort of stuff. But I think that With Bob and David show that they that they put out was a little. It was not good. I don't think it was a very good show. As someone who loved Mr. Show, I think that them trying to get it back didn't really work out all that great. Oh yeah, Comedians of Comedy is incredible. Yes, Pat. Both like the live show thing they put out, but also the series they did for Comedy Central, which is kind of not, if I'm not mistaken, not that easy to find these days. I'm going to say Ricky Henderson because David Cross had a really good Ricky Henderson bit, but Ricky Henderson didn't have a really good David Cross bit. So, you know. James in Glasgow says, been a big fan over the years. Thanks for all the great work. I'm an auctioneer in Scotland and recently cleared a flat which the owner generally left in terrible condition apart for his collection of Neo Geo and other retro games. There is a lot of material, both Neo Geo, Sega Master System, and other games, as well as Neo Geo Pocket and other consoles. So I wondered if you could advise what I should be looking out for, any particular titles, etc. This was all from before my time, so it's not a generation I have much knowledge of, aside from the fact that there are keen collectors out there. And so he's looking for help on valuation. It's all worthless. You should just send it all to me, and I'll dispose of it properly. I'll make sure it gets. It's probably dirty anyway. I mean, if the flat was in terrible condition, that stuff is probably. God, these Neo Geo games these days, they are full of the rainbow fentanyl. You don't put them in a bag, seal them up, and send them to me, and I will dispose of them safely and appropriately. You've got to get rid of these things. You've got to get them over to me before something terrible happens. If you look at these Neo Geo carts for too long, you may die. Don't take the chance. Send it to me. I got a P.O. box specifically for this. It's safe waste disposal. Just make sure you do not get the do not get the fentanyl on your skin. It'll get you. Go look at price charting. That's my actual advice. Just selling it locally. If you're going to auction it off locally, you might not get as much as you would get online. The worldwide market is probably going to be a little more friendly to you from a price perspective, but who can say? I would honestly just like take a look at what you got and look it up. It's not necessarily any individual titles that I can call out per se, but there's just a lot of, generally speaking, a lot of Neo Geo stuff has risen in value. There are going to be some fairly common games that are not going to be worth very much at all. You're kind of early, like your Samurai Showdown 1s and your, Fatal Fury Special. Those were the games I remember going to Japan and seeing. I bought multiple copies of Samurai Showdown 2 home carts, nice condition, for like 200 yen. That's like $2. And at those prices, when those games originally cost $300, I bought, I think, 4 copies of Samurai Showdown 2 because it's one of the greatest games ever made. And at those prices, it was just disgusting. And so I brought it back. And so the movie theater in our area that I worked at for a summer, and by a summer, I mean maybe a month. But it was, I delivered movies for that movie theater chain, and it was the movie theater everyone hung out at, and a bunch of people worked there, and my first girlfriend worked there. It was a whole thing. Anyway, there was a Sam Show 2 cabinet there, and so we would stay late and play it a lot. And so I bought all those carts and then brought them back and just gave them to people who didn't even have Neo Geos. I was just like, hey, here's something nice for you to put on a shelf. It's a nice quality copy of this amazing game that you have put hundreds of dollars worth of quarters into over the years. Here's something nice for you. And, people seem to appreciate it and all that other stuff. Anyway, it was just so stupid cheap. But yeah, I would go to price charting, and that's not going to be a perfect guide, but it will at least give you the ballpark. Neo Geo carts aren't exactly lookers. You say, well, these were home carts that were in boxes with proper art on them and stuff. These were not the arcade carts that just come in cardboard boxes. This is actual nice shit. Great artwork, great art. Great game. Price charting will give you that kind of ballpark of like, hey, what's worth what's crazy. You can go look at, how much volume there is on some of this stuff, and you'll get a sense of like what you might get on eBay if you decide to go that route, or if you decide to auction it off locally, which I don't know that I would. I mean, I don't know what the scene's like in Scotland. I don't, maybe it's fucking blowing up and you'll get maximum top fucking dollar for it, but I might just take it to an eBay or something like that. Yeah. Wow, we got another Neo Geo Pocket email here from Cheyenne who says, I get really excited when you mention the Neo Geo Pocket Color and loved that you streamed some games recently. When I was a little kid, I asked my dad for a GBA when it launched, but my dad is a deal hunter and he bought me a Neo Geo Pocket Color from eBay instead. I ended up loving it and playing it a ton, and eventually I was one of the very few weirdos adding Neo Geo Pocket game pages to your wiki right when it launched. Hmm. Someone should do a good video game wiki. I think that would be cool. I just wanted to know if you have any interesting industry stories or thoughts about the console you'd be willing to share and what your favorite games are. Personally, I was a huge fan of Biomotor Unitron, Samurai Showdown 2, Dark Arms, Beast Buster 1999, and Neo Geo Cup 98. Yeah. Those are bangers. The Neo Geo Pocket Color, I think, is a fucking awesome platform. And they were very forthcoming when it came to sending it out for coverage, which is great because it means I have like almost every game that came out in the States. In some cases, multiple copies. But they were very cool. They went and when they needed PR for the US launch of that thing, they went and got some pretty seasoned individuals to run PR for it. And it was a pleasure to deal with people like Jean and some other the folks that were representing the Neo Geo Pocket Color in the States. And yeah, it's I always thought it was a great platform. I even played they had a couple of slot machine games on that thing that were not bad for what they were. And I thought the fighting games, I was so enamored with the concept of portable fighting games with or the idea of taking these big, arcade games and reducing them to the color palette of the Neo Geo Pocket, or in some cases the Game Boy or the GBA. There were more showing up there as well. And how well they still played, like how much of those games they were able to capture because they were so good at making them. Samurai Showdown 2 for the Neo Geo Pocket Color was good. They did a couple of King of Fighters. There is a SNK versus Capcom fighting game, as well as those card games. The card games are really neat, but I'm just not a card game guy. So it kind of didn't work out for me. Yeah, Gal Fighters, for sure. I am a big Ganbare Neo Poke-kun fan. When it comes to that platform, that thing's a disaster of a product, and I am still occasionally playing it on my Steam Deck. And I have not unlocked anything. I have not even finished the first page of games because I accidentally left that dude alone for a week. And now every time when I come back, he is freaking out, or he is so depressed that he will not go make new video games for me. He will not go make new fun mini games for me to play. And I cannot blame him because I have not been taking care of him. Gosh, what else? I mean, there's even a pretty good version of Pac-Man on that thing, which is not, I wouldn't necessarily go back to it today. When they put Pac-Man out on the Neo Geo Pocket Color, they included these weird rubber rings with it, and you put them around, because it had a clicky 8-way stick that was like the Neo Geo CD pad, another pad that everyone is totally familiar with. Anyway, it came with this red rubber ring that you would stick around the clicky stick that would lock it down to 4 ways. The idea being that would make it easier to play Pac-Man on that controller. I didn't need it, but it was cool that they did that. There was a pretty good Sonic the Hedgehog, actually. Not that any of those games are any good, but in terms of like a portable Sonic game on the Neo Geo Pocket Color, is such a weird concept. Pretty good as far as portable Sonic games go. Gosh. Dive Alert was neat. Facelli was neat. Of course, Biomotor Unitron. They did a sequel to that I think maybe got translated. I'm not sure. But there's a Japanese only sequel to that. And gosh, Beast Busters was kind of interesting for sure. Neo Turf Masters, that's a really good portable golf game. Yeah, those are the ones that kind of jump out at me off the bat. But yeah, those are the Neo Geo Pocket Color was an awesome platform. You know, the library's not massive. It didn't get a ton of third-party support. But it was a really cool... It is still, I think, still a really cool platform. I think those games, some of those games hold up and still play pretty well. And so if you wanted a fun, weird thing to carry around with you in this day and age, you could do a lot worse than the Neo Geo Pocket Color. Metal Slug, good Metal Slugs there as well. Just a great platform. And it never had a chance. I guess if you're asking about the kind of industry side of it, when it came out, I remember those of us that fucking cared about the Neo Geo and cared about SNK and all that stuff, we were like, fucking yeah. Abso-fucking-lutely. Let's fucking go. Very excited about that thing. And importing them and importing games and all this other shit. And then when it was coming out in the US, again, like the PR people were very good about sending all that stuff out for review and for coverage and all that sort of stuff. So I still have like a shipping box. I still have like the box that all the games showed up in that is like a retail shipping box that those games went to stores in. I have a Neo Geo Pocket like flash linker, like flash cart around here somewhere, but it's one of the old ones that has to hook up like through a parallel port, and so never going to be able to use that again. But yeah, that was pretty cool. And emulation of it is really good these days too. So there are a lot of ways to play it. Even if you don't want to go pay whatever crazy collector's prices you would have to pay these days to get your hands on those games. That is potentially an option as well. And they sell some of those packages on Steam. And I think the Switch also, where some of the Neo Geo Pocket games came out in collections there too. So, there's none of the really weird shit. It's not like you're going to get like, hey, here's a package that includes Cool Jam and Cool Tune, Dreamcast and Neo Geo Pocket linked together. That's not going to happen, but what are you going to do? Emily writes in and says, the martyrdom perk should come to Splatoon 3. My fresh corpse should blast my team's ink. The word martyrdom in Splatoon font should fill the screen. Yep. It was only recently when I believe on Tumblr, someone was asking me about someone brought up the martyrdom perk. At the time, we were so innocent then. And now you read it and you go, they did a thing where you drop a grenade when you die and your body blows up and takes whoever is near you with you. And they literally called it fucking martyrdom. What the fucking fuck? I am in complete agreement with you, Emily, on every single part of this. The martyrdom perk should come to Splatoon 3. Your corpse should explode in ink. And the word martyrdom in Splatoon font should fill the screen. I sense a great need. The community do it for the culture. Wait. Let's do one more here. Will writes in from Kennewick, Washington, and says, I heard you mention that one of your kids was watching Blue's Clues, which I thought was an old show that had already finished, but I guess a new version is currently airing. It got me curious whether there were any older kids shows you pick out personally, or if it's more whatever's featured on streaming services or TV, or just something they gravitate towards. So we moved on to the Blue's Clues that is currently being made, which has a different name. I think it's like Blue's Clues and You, but no, we were watching the original run of Blue's Clues, and also a lot of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. my daughter became very excited about going to the doctor and getting shots and getting exams and all of this other stuff, something that she used to not be down with, but now is very excited about going to the dentist and the doctor and all this other stuff. And I think it's because there are episodes where Mr. Rogers goes to the doctor and gets shots and talks through it and all of this other stuff. And and it really, yeah, she is psyched now when she goes to the doctor and all that sort of stuff. And it's awesome to not have to fight with her as much. For my wife to not. My wife takes her to the doctor usually because I'm in here doing this. But yeah, it's, yeah, Mr. Rogers has been really good. There's a new a new show that is like a Mr. Rogers spin-off called Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood that we have been watching quite a bit of lately, and it's still being made, and it's a little too, I don't know. My daughter really likes it and is like gets really focused on it when it's on, and like maybe a little too focused. But also, it's the first time I've seen her answering questions that have been asked by TV. And so she's like listening and answering questions and all that sort of stuff, which is interesting to see. Her vocabulary is so expansive and it's crazy. It's really fascinating just how well she puts words together. Her pronunciation isn't always perfect, but yeah, she is for someone who has not really gone to school and on her third time going to preschool, seemingly brought home COVID. And so we're probably, we might wait a little bit before we put her back in. We're going to do some other things with her, I think. Get her around other kids and socialize and some other stuff. Anyway, it's been really fascinating. Just the level of dialogue that she, the types of conversations she can have and how much that grows every single week, if not day. It's really fascinating. It's really great. She just seems so smart and so excited about learning and stuff, and it's just cool. We've not gotten into Bluey or anything really recent. And this is stuff I kind of hear from my wife because she's out socializing with other moms and other stuff like that in a way that I am not. I'm not out socializing with other moms. I don't know what you heard. But that a lot of them are just like watching, like having their kids watch fucking Cocomelon. And I don't know if you've seen Cocomelon. It is the most abysmal fucking robot ass AI generated ass shit that I have ever. It is alarming that it is something that like parents are like letting their kids watch, because there's just like a 24/7 live stream of it on YouTube, and like if you like Cocomelon was fucking everywhere. There's toys in stores and shit for it now, but it's just a fucking YouTube thing as far as I know. Early on we were into something called Badanamu, which is similar, but I think the songs are a lot better. And the thing that Cocomelon does is they will have songs, the exact same song, the exact same melody, and they will have 5 different videos that all have different words to the same song. And it is the most fucking zombie inducing. Like, my daughter has seen it a couple of times. She went to stay with her grandparents. This is a while ago now. And they put it on for her. and she like really started requesting it and stuff a lot. And eventually she just wasn't exposed to it for a long time and kind of forgot about it and got into other stuff. But like, Cocomelon is scary. And it's I don't understand. Again, I don't understand how parents can feel great about leaving their kids in front of Cocomelon, because it seems like the dumbest shit imaginable. It's really hard for me to imagine, like, if we had done that, if we had put my daughter in front of Cocomelon instead of the variety of stuff we've been showing her. We, at one point we had her watching Bananas in Pajamas. She was kind of into for a little bit. It just hypnotizes the kids, and it just feels like they just shut off and they're just staring at it until you turn it off, and then they freak out. And Cocomelon is really dire shit, man. It's frightening. And so I'm glad, like hearing the parents are just like, oh yeah, no, she loves Cocomelon. Like it's kind of like a post Baby Shark thing. Like kind of maybe after Baby Shark was done on YouTube or whatever, that maybe Cocomelon kind of picked up some of that slack. That stuff is fucking scary. That's the stuff that it just, like I said, it feels like it's just an AI generating it, and that no humans are involved in the production of it. That it's just like, or if it is, it's some kind of weird sweatshop situation. I don't know. They do an okay version of Wheels on the Bus, but not. Yeah, I don't know. My wife grew up loving Raffi, and so we've had some Raffi on. I don't know if I was just too old for it or what, but I was not exposed to much Raffi as a kid, and so it's all kind of new to me. And Raffi's pretty good. He sings a lot more about the environment now than he does kind of new kids songs and stuff like that, but in a way that's like not as easy for young children to understand. You know what I mean? Like his message about the environment is true and correct and all that sort of shit. But it's like when you're listening to a Spotify playlist and it's like, okay, we're going from Wheels on the Bus to fucking Baby Beluga to Mr. Sun, and now here's a song about how all the whales are dying. And you're like, okay, all right, I'm with you, but like my daughter is 3. But yeah, his early concert videos and stuff like that. Like I bought that stuff on DVD and ripped it and all this other shit. Yeah, man, Cocomelon is a weird. Cocomelon is scary. Oh yeah, Little Baby Bum. That's another one that also has, yes. There's just a lot of fucking. And people have, there's articles and all this other stuff about all the scary shit on YouTube that is masquerading as kids programming. But for me, Cocomelon was the one that was just like, this is designed to keep kids dumb. This feels like it is designed to keep kids super fucking stupid and like complacent and quiet. And I'm sure that, yes, parents need that. But like, even still, like, honestly, Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood has that effect on my daughter where she gets locked in a way that is like sometimes a little scary. But also she comes away from each one of those episodes knowing the songs and knowing and learning the vocabulary and all this other stuff. And that's a better outcome, I think, than whatever the fuck is going on Cocomelon. Yeah, no, and yes, maybe someday we'll get into the pregnant Elsa videos. I don't know. I've never actually seen one of those. I play Flash games, but that's something different. Anyway, that's going to do it for the show. Thanks everybody for hanging out. Sorry, I know my voice is still a little fucked up. But it's getting there. And yeah, so I'll probably be back tomorrow to stream some video games for y'all. I don't know. Why don't we play some video games? It's been a while. I need to play some. And yeah, thanks again to everyone for hanging out and watching the show. People that are back in the Patreon again. That's thank you so much. You can go to patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann for more details on that. You are keeping me doing this in a way that I think I like to do it, and hopefully is a way that you like it to be done. And yeah, like I said, it's doesn't seem like the landscape out there is fucking awesome. So thanks again for letting me do this on our terms and not on anyone else's. Thanks for keeping it going and all that sort of stuff. Again, if you want an ad-free version of the show, some bonus stuff, all of that, you can head over to patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. And I'm working on something new here. It is slow going. It was something I wish was ready to go right now, but it is going to take a little time, partially because I think I need to think of a name for it. And then once there's a name, I want to get someone to make some cool graphics and then all that sort of stuff. But, hopefully the hope is before too long here, I will shake this cough and we will be interviewing some people on a fairly regular basis. That's the hope here. On a brand new show, all of that sort of shit. I've just got to, again, come up with a name and a look and all this other stuff and then start booking people. And I've already got a first guest in mind. We put out some feelers and all that sort of stuff. We'll see if we can make that happen. And I am hoping that that'll happen next month. But yeah. It's been the thing that I've been working towards for a little while here, but yes, sidetracked by all this other stuff that's been going on. So yeah, everybody have a good rest of your week. If you're watching live, I should be back Wednesday morning to stream some stuff and maybe talk a little less. We'll see. Actually, my throat doesn't hurt, honestly. Usually at the end of some of these shows, my throat will be awfully sore and I'll need to go drink some tea. I feel okay. My voice is just not holding up. Still a little, still a bit of a cough, still a little phlegmy, but we're all tested negative. And so I think we're past it. The CDC says we are. The CDC is like, fuck it, man, go out. And I'm like, really? Are you sure? I don't know, man. It seems dicey, but if you say so. Anyway. Well, anyway, yeah. Have a good rest of your week, and we'll be back next week with the podcast. Of course, yes. Planning on streaming Wednesday and Friday, barring anything fucking crazy happening. So all that other stuff. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there. And if you can avoid getting sick, my recommendation is to avoid getting sick. Have a good one. I'll see ya. Turn this up.